Beyond the Waves is a Hail Hail Media production. It may contain sweary words, and adult situations may be discussed. If you're in the company of underage temps, turn off the show now and listen back later. If you'd like to get in touch with the show, email us at beyondthewaves67@gmail.com. You can also find us on Twitter at BTW Celtic Show, or you can join our group on Facebook at Beyond the Waves. Hail, hail, and keep the faith. Welcome to the Beyond the Waves Celtic Football Show. My name is Graham Wilson. 2-0 victory today for Celtic over Hertz. And Lee Griffiths opening his Celtic account. And what a finish and what a celebration. Right in front of the No Surrender lady. I'm telling you, Rev, that lady might be one of the least attractive humans ever.
Kind of close. It's kind of close.
Joining us as always from Perth Amboy, New Jersey. You just heard him. You know him. You love him. It is the Rev. Hello, Rev.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you as well, sir. And I want to give a shout out to Billy Noel. I had an opportunity to go on his show this past week, Desert Island Tims. He gave a nice shout out for you.
Did he? I haven't listened to Desert Tims for a couple of weeks.
Well, not on the air.
Oh.
It's my show, dick.
Oh.
Listen, when it's the Rev's Desert Island Tim special, then, he'll do it on the air. But it was my show. No, we were talking, off the air and everything, and he had loads of nice things to say about you as well. And why wouldn't he? Everybody loves you.
Awesome. I take that as a good compliment. I love all this stuff.
Yeah. Yes, he is one of the more creative elements here at Hail Hail Media, and he does fantastic work. So I was honored that he even asked me to go on there, and it was a lot of fun. So you can find that obviously on Hail Hail Media, and a shout out to him. And so 2-0. Lee Griffiths with just, in my opinion, one of the more impressive goals so far in 2014. Set up from a brilliant pass from Anthony Stokes. Anthony Stokes probably didn't have his best game today. Seems to be a bit confused. His decision-making seems to be off, but the pass that he put in for Lee Griffiths, and then what Lee Griffiths did with his first touch, setting himself up, giving himself enough space, and obviously the marking and the defending was quite poor, but what a strike, to finish that goal. It was starting to get in that nervy time in the game, 0-0, the game's starting to press on. Yes, we got over the tension of getting Fraser Forster that Scottish record for most minutes with a clean sheet, and he obviously was able to break through that, and congratulations to him. That's just a fantastic mark, breaking Bobby Clark's record, who for those who may not be aware, he is now the head coach at the University of Notre Dame here. So he's a very successful collegiate soccer coach here in America, and was the keeper for Aberdeen for years and years and years, coming up into the time when Alex Ferguson was the manager of Aberdeen. Some great years for Aberdeen Football Club. But now the record is firmly with Fraser Forster. But once Lee Griffiths gets that goal, it does relieve some of the pressure. But still, we want to keep a clean sheet, and we also had to fend off a lot of pressure from Hearts. I mean, it seemed as though Hearts was coming out, fast and furious from the get-go. I mean, from the first 15 minutes, they were pressing everything, and it was just like we just needed to be able to take the punches and to just sort of weather the storm, if you will, because they couldn't keep up that pace throughout the entire game. What were your thoughts on the game, Rev?
Obviously, it was a good game. Like you said, it was nervy. I, missed a bit of the first half, these early morning games. But no, once he got, officially got, the clean sheet minutes record, a nice bit of relief there. And yeah, like you said, the second half started, and I'm feeling like it's, could go one of those games where, 0-0, and then you start trying a little hard, you get a little risky, and then you get caught on, counterattack, or, the other team capitalizes on your mistakes. But they dominated, possession pretty much most of the whole game. The nice insurance goal by Pookie at the end to just solidify it. And, congrats to Lee Griffiths, and I'm sure for him doing it against Hearts is a nice little bonus.
You couldn't have picked there. Definitely you couldn't have picked a better place to score your opening goal for sure.
Yeah, and it seems like he's I misjudged him at first. I didn't think he was at all the part, but he seems like he can do well enough here. Obviously not a like-for-like replacement, for Gary Hooper. But I'd go with him over Pookie, definitely. Hopefully, him and Stokes can actually, they can form a good partnership. It looks like, there's kind of glimpses there of what, how they can be together. And I think they can play off each other and play very well, And at the same time, though, I'd like to see Balde come in a little earlier in the game, maybe, 70th minute or 65th minute, something like that. And because I like what he does a lot too.
Well, and I want to get into that point here in just a minute. But, Stokes and Griffiths, in my opinion, a lot of the times cancel each other out. I mean, so many opportunities, especially in the first half, where balls were going into the box, and some of the service was absolutely phenomenal. I mean, Bitan sending balls into the box. Mm-hmm. Charlie Mulgrew a couple of times sent just perfectly, just perfect balls in. I mean, it's kind of frustrating because, not even from dead ball situations or even corners, but, as we're bombing down the flanks, the service into the box is exceptional. And then we get to the corners, and, too often for me, it's either Stokes or Commons typically who are taking the corners, and they can't even beat the first man. I mean, that's frustrating to me. It just seems maybe a lack of focus, definitely a lack of execution. But getting back to my original point about Stokes and Griffiths, so often there would be maybe one man in the box for that ball coming in. You just don't see that presence, that and I've been calling out for it for years. More of a target man, but somebody that has a bit more instinct back to goal. Some of that build up coming through the middle. We had obviously with a 4-4-2, more of a diamond formation as it was laid out today. You have to rely on your fullbacks to provide the width, and that leaves something to be desired when you have Charlie Mulgrew at left back. He just doesn't have that mobility and that same level of technical skill down the flank that Emilio Zagari has. But nonetheless, he can whip the ball into the box with great efficiency. I think Adam Matthews is still he's not maybe match fit. His form really hasn't rounded out just yet. There were a couple of ropey moments for him, but nonetheless, even an Adam Matthews that's 75% of the way there is still going to provide a lot. But building up through the center, so often we just didn't have enough mobility, between Stokes and Griffiths, where they're just statues. Nobody's dropping a bit further back to take the ball. And for me, this gets into another one of my points. I thought Commons had a bit of a quiet game today. He's supposed to be facilitating. I mean, if you want to call it a 4-3-1-2, I don't know if I'd go that far, because obviously Scott Brown has more of a roaming role, and I think it's probably his best role on that right-hand side there. But I was expecting Commons to facilitate a lot of link up, and so often he would drop so far back he'd get stuck. He'd be right next to Johansson or even Beaton sometimes, and there was a disconnect between the midfield and the strikers. Most notably because I think the strikers, both Stokes and Griffiths, are waiting to peel off the back shoulder of a defender, which you like to see, but you want a striker that's going to have the instincts, going to read the game a bit better, and just grab the game by the scruff of the neck. It's a terrible cliche, but what I mean by that is somebody that's going to be able to read the game and say, right, here, if I go over here, I can facilitate the build up and give our midfielders a bit more of an option, a bit more of a ball to be played in, and we just don't have that. And I think that, picking up on the point that you just dropped there about Balde, I just don't understand why he doesn't get more of an opportunity. I mean, he, in the 3 to 5 minute appearances that he tends to get, shows more than many of our strikers can in 90 minutes. He does everything. I mean, he can take a ball for a run. I think that his technical skill is extremely underrated. I think that he tends to get a bit typecast because of the size that he has, but he's very good with the ball at his feet. For a big man, I think that he's got a lot of Samaras in him from that element, but he's hungry. You can tell. Anytime that he's running onto a ball, you can tell he's just itching to do something. And I mean, I was not surprised at all. A minute, 2 minutes after he comes on, here he is. He could have taken that goal himself, and he squares a pass for Pukki, and Pukki took the goal quite well. But I would like to see Balde get more of a run. I mean, at minimum, sub him on the 65th minute. Get him more of an opportunity, more of a chance. Not just to have an impact on the game, but to give the management and to give his teammates a sense for how he can play and where he's going to be best suited. Other roles that we can suit him into, and that gives us a better understanding for sort of strategic planning. Going up against certain opponents. I think he'd be an excellent choice for Europe. I mean, I know I'm going to get crucified for that statement, but the type of player that he is, I think, would be ideally suited for going up against some of these sides in Europe, where you're going to have to be a bit more clever. You're going to have to, be a bit more, flying by the seat of your pants to try and create. I think he does that, and it's disappointing that we don't see more of him. And unfortunately, the prognosis for him, in my opinion, is he's probably going to wind up getting loaned out. And I think that Lennon just doesn't rate him even enough, in spite of the fact that, like I said, he gets on for these short little windows and always has an impact.
No, you're right. That I don't know if you want to maybe call it Paddy McCourt syndrome. Kind of the same thing where he's got that ability, that spark. I mean, I don't know. Can he do a full 90 minutes? Is it something like that? Like, is his he just doesn't have the right fitness, or do they just, like you said, does Lennon just not rate him high enough? But I think he could kind of be like that super sub role. Come in, 60, 65th minute, especially a game where it's 0-0 or 1-0, and we kind of need to we need a spark, something creative, like you said. And I think he could definitely fill that role. Like, there's definitely a player there. He's got the ability, and just needs a little. If that's the case, if he's lacking in something, he just needs a little coaching to have that drawn out of him, and show himself, be shown his strengths and how to apply them properly in the system.
Well, I think that a lot of what he's being rated on is coming through training, and maybe he's not a good trainer. Who knows what the sort of intangibles are that are being evaluated to have Lennon, slot him in or keep him out, or whatever the case is. And I think that Lennon probably just rates other players much higher than him from just a general contribution level. But sometimes you need to take a step back and say, some players, maybe they aren't good trainers, but when they get on the park, they're a different player. It's time to start giving players like him an opportunity. I know that there's such an onus now on getting Fraser Forster's record, and granted, he's not playing center half, but I think that a lot of sort of the mentality, the rhythm, and the flow of the game is affected from the play of your strikers and your ability to put the game away early. I think that we've had such an advantage throughout much of the season, being able to score that quick early goal and essentially drop our opponents' heads and then wait for opportunities to put them to the sword, hopefully before halftime. But this is our opportunity. If we're gonna just base whether or not we keep him or loan him out solely on how he is at Lennoxtown, I think that we're missing a trick with it. And I think that he deserves, given what he's demonstrated when he comes on, I think he deserves a run out. Maybe a couple of starts here and there. I would fully expect, obviously considering he's not going to the World Cup, and as we mentioned last week, we're going to need to give a lot of these players a rest towards the end of the season, even if they're not going to the World Cup, because we're going to have to come in and we're going to have an early preseason, and there are going to be very, very meaningful games very early on in our season. So, that might be the opportunity to give a Stokes, certainly a Griffiths, maybe even a Pookie, a bit of a rest and start playing ball day, and see what we got with him. I was glad to see Samros. I sent out a cheeky tweet before the game, like, what are the odds on Samros starting today? But it's the type of thing that wouldn't surprise me, but I was relieved. I mean, obviously it was on the bench. I still don't quite understand the utility or the value in having 4 strikers on the bench. And it does, I think, in a certain way, reveal our lack of depth at certain areas. We had Heron on the bench, which I was glad to see. I think there's a lot of promise with him from an attacking midfielder perspective. But, I'd like to see some of, perhaps some of our defenders get an opportunity at least to sit on the bench and to get that experience. Why is Samaras getting that experience? It's clear that he doesn't want to stay. The only thing that isn't clear is what the hell he's thinking. And that's up to him and his agent to figure out. Not Neil Lennon, not the club. That's solely down to him. He's had plenty of chances to sign a new deal. And, granted, maybe the deal isn't fair in his mind, or, he thinks that he's worth more. But at the end of the day, that's the deal that's being levied. So you're either in or you're out. And I just don't see the value in having him around.
No, definitely. And sorry, let me jump in. I realized that today after really giving a good look over, at the squad, after the transfer window, and we really don't have a whole lot. We're in, a couple key positions. We don't have pretty good backup coverage for. We all know what the problem areas are, but if we lose Van Dijk to an injury, we're kind of hurting a little bit, with Lustig out too, he can at least, slot over to center back, but he's out. So, once you go and you look at the bench, our bench is kind of weak, and that's not really good right now, especially at this point in the season where, the league's wrapped up, but, you still want to finish strong or, at least, keep up the pace that you've kept pretty much the whole season for the most part. And if we start dropping guys to injuries the way it's kind of been going the last, month or so, it could be a sloppy finish. You know what I mean? Yeah,
no question. I think that's a fair point. And, to talk about, obviously we have loads of injuries just now. I mean, James Forrest, it's a broken record. He tends to have, these niggling injuries that, he plays 2 games, then he goes out, for a month or whatever. Obviously, Michael Lustig has something that's going to keep him out for an extended period. Charlie Mulgrew is just coming back, and I'm not really sure what his specific problem was.
I don't know either.
I don't even know if it was an injury. Still yet to be confirmed, but he was in today. You could tell that he's just coming back after some time away. It was a bit rusty early going, but I think that he was solid enough there at the back. I think as I mentioned, some of his service was sublime, and he's the type of player. And I get where Neil Lennon's coming from in terms of we don't need to have a direct replacement for every position on the park. Because we have so much flexibility. You can move Charlie Mulgrew to several different positions. He can play center half. He can play central midfield. If Johansson has to go out in the middle of the week, it looked like he took a sore one there during the game today. If Mulgrew needs to slide over in central midfield, we can do that, which I think might not be a bad idea considering how badly our midfield was overrun the last time we played Aberdeen. But Neil Lennon also talks about the value of having these kids travel with the first team and the experience being around the first team players and picking up, little nuggets of information and just, increasing their confidence and their comfort around the first team. Even if Lustig and, Mulgrew, to use that example, would be out, and Izagiri now, even if they're out, and, we have other first team players that, could possibly slot in, i.e. Pookie, Samaras, etc., Bo Richter. Why not swap out Samaras for, one of our young kids, one of the defenders, Joe Chalmers, to use an example. Derek Fisher, he's had an extended run with the first team. And I think that, it was a bit harsh to drop him in favor of Adam Matthews straight away, considering he really didn't do anything wrong. That's a bit of a head scratcher for me. Why isn't Fisher on the bench, but Samaras is? It's something that theoretically I disagree with. But, aside from that, some nervy moments throughout the game today. Like I said, lots of cynical fouls coming from Hearts. The referee, I think, on several occasions just absolutely blew it. But, there weren't the type of situations that cost us dearly. Some stupid yellow cards that were picked up, no question about that. But there was always pressure. And I think that, we were able to ride it out, to a large extent. But for me, I would like to see the movement, up top of our strikers to get much more sharp. I think that, when the tempo starts to slow down and, we get into these nervy moments, it comes from, our strikers just being very one-dimensional, and, we're going to need to figure out a way for Stokes and Griffiths to stop canceling each other out and work together, as opposed to just trying to do things, unanimously and trying to create on their own. Those are key elements of a partnership. The question is, do they have those sort of strings in their bow, so to speak? But
to be fair, and I'll cut them a little slack for now because it's only been 3 weeks that they've been together. So hopefully, get a couple games under their belts and they can work out the chemistry that they need to be successful.
Yep. Absolutely, no question about it. Now joining us from South Jersey, it is Yampy. Hey, Yampy.
Yo, what's up, fellas?
How you doing, brother?
Not too bad, G. How you doing? What's up, Brad?
What's going on?
Nada.
What'd you make of the game today, sir?
I was pretty happy. First half was a little bit of a wash. It was like, kind of back and forth. You figure it wasn't going to be an easy game, bit of a slog at Tynecastle, but second half, I think Celtic did a little better job opening it up a little, and, the desired result is what we got. So, not too much to complain about.
No, I would agree with that. I was happy, and let's talk about this, for just 1 second. Lee Griffiths, we've obviously not been the biggest fans of this move to bring him in, but at times today, he was a bit suspect at times. Think back to that situation in the first half where he just falls down. There was no contact. He just lost his footing. He falls down, almost falls directly on the ball, gets up, and then it just slides his way through 2 defenders and winds up almost setting up an opportunity for himself. And it was almost like, you're ready to slag him, but then, watching him just sort of fight through that and wind up almost creating an opportunity out of it, that's exactly what you want to see. That's the sort of fight. And then to set up a goal the way that he did, and then to take it the way he did, he's making great strides in winning the support over. Immediately goes over in front of the Heart supporters, does his celebration in front of the ugliest human in the face of the earth, and then runs back.
Girl, man.
And he runs back 60 yards across the pitch, back to Neil Lennon, as almost like a thank you for having faith in him. You can tell that, he's just enjoying his football. He's enjoying his experience. I'm hoping that that's not where he wound up injuring himself. But nonetheless, after the game, you could see that, he was just so happy to have contributed the way that he did, walked straight over to the Celtic supporters. He's doing a lot to endear himself, isn't he?
Right. Well, again, I said the easiest route to a lot of supporters' Hearts is going to be he's going to have to produce. And it's not going to win. There's some people who's not going to ever win over 100%. I found that, I was happy he scored today. But again, it's going to take me a long time to really warm up to him. I'm nobody special or anything, but again, it's just, you think about all the things that we talked about before when it comes to Lee Griffiths, and it's like, I mean, it's not easy to just push that aside and say, "Yay, well, he scored a goal. All is forgiven." People don't roll like that.
Right.
But that being said, I said on Twitter this morning, I'm going to try and give him a shot. I'm not going to sit there and just be like, "Oh, he's a dick. He's this, he's that," and be hypercritical. I'm going, it's second, third game, and that he's seen any significant time. I'm going to give him a chance. I'm not going to be too much of a prick. See what he can do. And I think the partnership with Stokes is just the very beginnings of a work in progress.
Yeah.
I think people have to give that a chance.
Yep.
I like the fact that he's going to take some of the burden off Stokesy. I think a lot of Stokesy's problem is that when he feels like he has to be a goal scorer is when he starts putting balls in the crowd and everything.
He does force it. You're right. Absolutely.
So now that he has Griffiths out there, I think they can form a pretty decent partnership. And, Stokesy's really good when he, if reminds me a little bit of like Commons, where it's like if he's has a more well-rounded game instead of focusing on just being scorer, he's the guy who set up Griffith's goal. That's going to bring out the best in Stokesy. Okay? I laughed when I saw that big goal. Oh, my God.
She looked like the no surrender lady.
She was like Jabba the Hutt, dude. I mean, she was like the 2-ton love goddess sitting over there. And that's probably why he ran away from her, man. Thought she was going to try and fucking eat him or something.
If he got any closer, his cholesterol was going to go up by 100 points.
Dear Lord, she's big. But no, it was nice to see that happen. And again, Griffiths is just starting to get his feet under him. You take into consideration he's playing at Tynecastle, where probably most of his fondest memories and the whole Edinburgh thing have come good and bad. So it's going to be very nervy for him. For that first 45 minutes, I didn't expect a lot from him, and quite frankly, he didn't give us a lot, so that worked out. But he came out in the second half, and he looked like he was a little more confident. And sure enough, man, he scored that goal. That's a pure goal scorer's goal.
Absolutely.
You can rip the guy 7 ways to May, but he juked out like 2-3 different guys to make that happen. So, fair play to him.
Yeah, I mean, location, power, it had everything, technique. And like you said, I mean, he one touch, just to kill the ball, another one to set himself free, give himself the space, and then he just, put it away. And that's the type of thing that's the thing that I think we've been missing from a lot of elements. And, we think back to Gary Hooper, and Gary Hooper had a lot of those sorts of goals, but it was more of, having his, Lee Griffiths, to a certain extent, did show back to goal sort of tendencies with that goal that I think Gary Hooper didn't quite have much of the time. Scott McDonald was sort of that type of player, where even if he had his back to goal, he could chest it down. I mean, think back to that goal that he scored against the Huns. Yeah. Flicked on from Sammy. Oh, great memories. But you're right. I mean, he's a Hibs man. Anytime that he can go into Tynecastle and score a goal, that's going to be good for him. And I was glad to see him, try and endear himself to the Celtics support, really want to get involved, and you can see how much it meant to him after the game. Those are the type of things that I think are going to start to have him become endearing to, some of the holdouts who are still cynical and skeptical about him. But slowly and surely, I think that he's winning over much of the Celtics support. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. We love an underdog story. This is a pure underdog story. I mean, granted, it's a bit unorthodox, considering the off the pitch issues, but nonetheless, if he can clean that up, and if he can, if he can not just demonstrate the results on the park, but also do it with a lot of effort and just run himself ragged for the badge, that's really all you can ask for from any player.
That's giving you a lot more than Sammy's given you in the past 6 months. So I mean, like, again, not for nothing, and all due respect to Sammy, I love him and everything, and still love the guy, but
I don't.
The window has passed for him, and Celtic needs a big goal guy, man. Someone, because look, Commons' play is leveling off. He's not the guy who's going to be pounding in goals every single game anymore. It seems like that's kind of tapering off. You need somebody to step up their game, and this is the perfect time. This is why we were so critical about the lineup selection against Aberdeen.
Yeah.
Because here's a guy who could have, maybe done more if he had been given more of a chance by the manager. But again, we discussed that before, that was poor lineup selection.
Yeah.
moving forward, we're still undefeated in the league. LeGrand Mariah is, what's that, 13 shutouts now?
13 consecutive clean sheets. I mean, that in and of itself, I mean, you can talk about, the lack of competition and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I don't care. 13 consecutive clean sheets going up against professional competition at the highest level is I mean, it's beyond impressive. It's something that stands, the test of time. And now, I mean, he has Van der Sar in his sights for the British record, and not too far after that, the European record. I think that it's going to be, if we can get a clean sheet against Aberdeen, and then, shortly into the following game, he can break the British record, which, is just, I mean, it's phenomenal in and of itself. I think he's firmly stamped his place on the plane, and for the World Cup spot, and really, just opened up many people's eyes, even south of the border, following on from the performances that he had in the Champions League last year, and even to a certain extent this past season, this past fall. But it's one thing to have, and Joe Hart is a perfect example of this. It's one thing to have, a streak, a run of games where you're in brilliant form, but can you continue it? Can you continue it on, and can you develop? Can you round out, the way that you play? And I think that he's done that. I think that, he had the flash in the pan, obviously against Barcelona, and he's been brilliant, really, I mean, for the past 3 seasons for us, no question. I mean, saving penalties, saving games. I mean, he's gotten us single-handedly points, and that's a rare trait from any keeper, and that's a rare opportunity that any keeper can take. But he's pushed on consistently, and he just keeps getting better. And that's the type of thing that, is going to stand him in good stead, not just, to get on the plane and to be a part of that England World Cup side, but also, to get the attention of not just these Premiership clubs, but the elite Premiership clubs, and just a quality Graham Morella type player. I mean, that's always in high demand, for any of the elite sides, not just in England, but throughout the continent. You hear ramblings of him being looked at by, Portuguese clubs, Spanish clubs, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, the net is cast so wide for him, and
somebody's going to pay top dollar for him, and rightfully so.
Yeah.
He's doing something that's very contrary for a keeper, is to play with I think he's playing with a really incredible level of confidence right now.
Yeah.
And that has nothing to do with the level of competition. You saw there for a little bit, he was starting to get in a bad habit of kind of like sitting back on his line.
Yep, exactly.
And, now you see him. He's out there. He's aggressive. He's doing things. He's running out and punching the ball to clear. I mean, like
a couple of times today, you saw that.
Yeah, he's being very aggressive. And with someone, if he was sitting on trying to collect a record, he would be doing the total opposite of that, which is what he had done when his game started to dip a little bit, which is sitting back on the line and not challenging shooters. And he's being aggressive, and that's what he's going to need to do to complete getting the streak. And he can definitely top any keeper that with any record, Van der Sar's record, if he continues to play with that style of aggressiveness. I mean, it's very impressive what he's done. There's no two ways about it. And every Celtic fan should be proud of that.
That's a great point that you bring up from the standpoint that, when you do have a record in your sights, and let's not kid ourselves. I mean, he can talk all he wants about not really paying attention to the record. That's in his mind. And you have 2 ways you can go about it. You can either, focus on it, have a tendency to tighten up and not want to make a mistake. And that, is in and of itself. I mean, if you think about not making mistakes, you're dramatically more likely to make those mistakes, locking up and having it affect your decision making. Or on the flip side, you can just go out and play free and play confident. And to your point, that's exactly what he's doing. That's exactly what you want to see from a player. Can they handle these big sort of high pressure moments? I mean, obviously it's just a league game, but there's so much more on the line for him. And as you pointed out, he's playing with a lot of freedom. And that's standing him in good stead as well, from a performance standpoint. One point that I want to pick up on, and I'm glad that you brought this up, and this is an interesting topic that I want to follow over the next several weeks, and it has to do with Griffiths. Obviously, Griffiths coming in, what sort of impact is he going to have on the side? And oftentimes when we bring in new players, they have an impact not just on the types of formations that we're playing and the style of play that we have. I mean, think back to January of 2011. Chris Commons comes in, and it gave us a completely different new element to how we can play. I mean, I think that Izagiri, by Commons coming in and playing just in front of Izagiri, I mean, it took Izagiri's game to a completely new level where, he and Commons were overlapping, so effectively that, I mean, obviously it spurred Commons on, but it impacted Izagiri quite well as well. But you also saw the direct knock-on effect once that happened, that Georgios Samaras basically evaporated. His role and his utility within the side sort of went away. And interestingly, the following season, when Chris Commons obviously had that great first the spring run into the season where he was just unstoppable. That following fall and that autumn. That following season, really, he went into a slump. There was rumors that there was friction between him and the coaching staff, and there was a run of games. He shows up with a neck brace, he got beat up and everything. And then Samaras comes back, and that's really when Samaras just blossomed, on that left hand side. And then Commons was sort of the cast out with that. I think that there's a new type of situation with Griffiths coming in and playing every week where this may neutralize Commons to a certain extent. Now, granted, in the past couple of weeks, with great success, we've played, a version of 4-3-1-2 or a 4-4-2 diamond, in a certain sense, with Commons really needing to be disciplined and playing further back than he has throughout the beginning part of the season when he was so dynamic and dangerous, playing in more of like a 4-4-1-1 where he was almost like in that supporting striker role. Well, we have two strikers that we're playing each week just now. And with him in support, I've noticed, especially in the past couple of games, he's been more quiet than we're used to seeing.
Right, and you have other things playing in the consideration there, too. It seems like the defense is playing a little bit of a higher line at the back. You got Van Dijk always coming forward all the way up. And
Ambrose did some of that today as well.
Ambrose had an excellent game today, and I think that he really didn't get much accolade for that. But I think he played really strong today. Bitan, there's another guy who had an excellent game too. I mean, this was as crap as people thought the first half was. It seemed like they were kind of like gelling a little bit to me, and it's like, you're right, it's going to take a little bit of the shine off of Commons' star, but it's more of a team effort. Now, I don't want Commons to have to be the guy carrying the load.
Agreed.
He's in the midfield. He should be like the quarterback, bringing the ball up, helping out the attack. Let the guys like Stokesy and friggin' and Griffiths and everybody, let them carry a little bit of the load.
Yeah.
Commons has been carrying the load a little too long for this team, and he needs other guys to pick up the slack.
Yeah.
And I think we saw a little bit of that today.
Yeah, good point. I do want to pick up on Bitan as well as Johansson, and I think that there's a partnership that's blossoming here that's really exciting to watch. I mean, Bitan was playing more of that deeper role, and it was interesting. When Fraser Forster's trying to play the ball out, obviously it's preferred, especially with the lack of a big man, to play the ball out on the ground, keep it on the floor, and try and build from the back that way. It was interesting, there was some observation, like it was similar to, what we see with Barcelona, where the center halves, just sort of separate and the defensive midfielder drops back. Typically it's Busquets that would drop deep and be the one that would play the ball up the park. And so often we saw that, especially in the first half. Bitan dropping back deep, Van Dijk and Ambrose splaying out wide, and then Bitan would try and build up from the back. And I thought he did exceptionally well. I mean, the boy can ping a pass. Some of these 30, 40-yard passes, inch perfect. I mean, and that two passes can take six players out of the game. I mean, that was especially impressive. Johansson, had a bit of a slow start, but as the game wore on, and we're noticing a pattern here. Johansson tends to get stronger as the game wears on, which is an exceptional trait, especially to have, in that center of the midfield and that engine. That's exciting. It's something that gives you a lot of hope and inspiration, going into the future. I think that we made two excellent purchases with these two players. So often, you have the anxiety. You buy a player, they come in, they play a couple of times, and then they seem to, like what we saw with Bitan, and they sort of go by the wayside, and maybe they're making the bench, maybe they're not, and it's like, is this player really going to stick on? But getting back to the point that I was just making, when you buy a certain player, it tends to make another player that can work in synchronicity with them much better. I think we've had that by introducing Johansson into the lineup, and Bitan's game has risen by leaps and bounds.
Sure. And I mean, not for nothing, these are guys who need to see regular time. Sure. I mean, like serious regular time.
Yep.
Hansen also showed a little bit of wheels today, man. He backtracked big time on that one where who was it? I forget, from Hearts. They had that little breakout and they tried to cross the ball through the 18, and he was back there. And
he saved the day, definitely.
Yeah, Hearts player ended up pulling him down. I mean, we have these are guys who don't have real flashy names, but they're going to be very exciting for this club if they're given the opportunity by the manager.
Yep.
It was a good game. It was a grind out game. A lot to be happy about in the end, and it was nice. I mean, except Bo Richter with his one chance.
I knew we weren't going to get through this without you having to go at Bo Richter. Please go.
Fucking comes in for like 5 minutes, and he's like 6 yards out. And they're paying this fucking clown $3 million over 4 years, and he hits the crossbar. Like,
I think it was saved to give a little bit of credit.
I'm not giving him any credit, dude. He's making way too much cash. He's got to bury that, bro. Seriously, come on. He was a fucking Ajax guy.
Yeah,
he's 6 yards out.
And they
score.
And they couldn't get rid of him quick enough. And that basically says it all. And to your point, he comes on, he has much more time to come in and sort of stamp his authority on the game as compared to Balde. Balde comes on and, true to form, once again, he gets 3 to 5 minutes and he makes something happen.
Balde comes on, he throws the guy into the third row, and it's all of a sudden it's a breakout. But who are the two guys that he had to choose from to pass that ball up to? Two guys hustling. You got Griffiths up there, you got Commons up there. It doesn't matter. 90-minute, and the dudes. It wasn't Griffiths. It was Pookie. Excuse me, Pookie. I'm all Griffiths out today. Pookie and Commons.
Yeah.
And
to his credit, he could have taken the goal himself, and he decided to play the smart pass there, for a player that was more open, and Pookie put it away.
What do you do with Balde at this point?
Well, I have an idea of what is going to be done with him. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I think it's inevitable that he's going to be loaned out because for whatever reason.
That's a problem, dude.
I agree.
He brings a total different dimension to the club. He's a size and speed guy, and you saw a little bit of that flash there. But if he's getting 4 to 5 minutes a game, don't know what you have. But if you're not going to loan him out, where does he fit?
Well, and I think that it's a bit unfair to label. He's not a target man. He's got far too much technique. I mean, he's not. This isn't a Daryl Murphy we're talking about. Daryl Murphy, by the way, got a call up to the Irish team, which just how that ever happens, I'll never know. But I mean, this is a player, Balde, that the ball at his feet, a bit of space in front of him, and that's exciting. I mean, that's the same type of dynamic that you have with Samaras when he gets a bit of space. Samaras obviously has a tendency not to pick his head up, but Balde, I mean, it doesn't look quite natural because he is so big, but he does tend to, to keep the ball quite close to him. He is showing a tendency to be quite good in traffic as well, and that's always something that's going to be handy. I would love to see us keep him and use him, as that 65th minute sort of super sub type of situation because he does bring on something quite different, and to have him, to fling him out there going up against tired legs is an extremely useful capacity to have. But I just don't think that it's going to be the situation where Neil Lennon's probably going to want to buy another striker in the summer. Well, who are you going to get rid of to make that space for him? I think Tony Watt's probably going to be sold, unfortunately, and that's another sort of thorn in my side. I don't know why we would want to do that, considering how young he is, how much talent he has, and how much production he's giving, not just for us, but for Belgium, for his Belgian side. But Neil Lennon, for whatever reason, I believe there's been too much water under the bridge personally between them.
Bad blood there, dude.
And I think that it's inevitable that he's going to get sold. But who then do you sell on to make space for him? I mean, maybe Samaras leaves and that opens up a spot. But I think it's getting a bit too congested in that striker position. If I have my druthers, Stokesy's locked up. Nobody's going to take him. If I have my druthers, I'd probably see if I can get somebody to pick up Pookie.
Absolutely.
It's the type of thing where Pookie. You can say, oh, well, he hasn't had enough time. I'm sorry. He started loads and loads of games in the early part of the season. We know what we got with him by now. I mean, he started probably 9-10 games, and he really hasn't contributed enough considering what we need. And I think that it's the type of thing where Balde offers far more in that substitute's role than Pookie ever would. So if it were me, I definitely hold on to Balde. But I don't think Lennon rates him enough, and I think that he's away on loan with the thought to try and sell him on.
Yeah, but how can you not rate him enough if you don't play him enough? I mean, what the fuck? You know, that makes no sense whatsoever. I don't rate him. Well, put him the fuck out there more and give some evidence, because shit, whenever I see him out there, he seems to be a bit of a difference maker, man.
Exactly.
Other teams can't handle his size when he runs at defenders. I mean, they start on the back foot, man. He's going after them.
Yeah.
But what are you going to find out about a guy if you're subbing him in the 85th and 86th minute?
Yeah, yeah, and that's one of the hopes that I have in the run into the rest of the season, especially after we get the league locked up and we stop worrying about records and all that kind of stuff. Start to play some of these players that are on the fringes to see what you got. Exactly to your point, to see where they fit in, where their strong suits are, so that if you're going up against a particular opponent, that Balde gives you a certain element that would be useful against them, and then you play him there, as opposed to we'll just stick him out and maybe he'll do something in the 85th minute. And he to his credit, he does that, but it's totally unfair, to your point, to just sort of cast them aside without. I mean, you want to talk about Pookie not getting a chance. How about Balde? Balde has just demonstrated in spite of not getting a chance. Imagine what he could do if he got the chance. That's my gripe with it. But one other thing that I want to pick up on, and this comes from some comments this week that were revealed from Joe Ledley. We're getting into these past couple of games. I don't even miss Joe Ledley anymore, to be honest. I mean, and it gets back to this partnership between Baton and Johansson. Especially if we're going to be playing this 4-4-2 diamond, where it does have a tendency to get a bit more narrow. But Johansson, I mean, the engine on this guy, he never stops running. He never stops working. He gets stronger as the game goes on. Now, Ledley, the knock that I've placed on Ledley, and I love Joe Ledley, forever. I mean, just an unending amount of love for Joe Ledley and his beard and all that shit. But if I had a knock on him, it was that, his first instinct was not to look up the park. It was that sideways, backward pass and just sort of slow things down, especially from a tempo perspective. Johansson is exactly the opposite. One of those, he pinged a pass in the first half to Stokes that should have been a goal, but it was good 35 yards, inch perfect, right to his feet. That's exactly what you want from a deep-lying sort of midfielder, even if he's on the left-hand side, that I don't think we ever got from Joe Ledley. I don't think Joe Ledley ever maybe had the courage to try and slide a slide rule pass through like that. Johansson gives you that element, and it's very exciting, to think about. He's just getting his bearings here in Scotland. He's only going to get better. But let me ask you this. Joe Ledley comes out and he says, and this just completely rubbed me the wrong way. I'm done with Joe Ledley now. Talking about, well, he was thinking about renewing his contract. He was going to sign a new deal. He was just going to sign it, but we sold him to Crystal Palace, so he really didn't have a chance. I'm sorry, that's complete bullshit. He had months and months where a deal was on the table. He was evaluating it, and listen, you're either going to stay or you're not going to stay. It was clear he wasn't, and then he comes out in the press afterwards and says, "Oh, I was telling the boys on the team I'm going to re-sign a new deal, and I was disappointed and all that stuff." No, you're not. That's bullshit. Crystal Palace doubled your wages, and you wanted to play in the Premiership, and now you're going to sweat your balls off trying to keep them up, and they're getting relegated. And this is a tough time in sort of his career. What I mean by that is, in terms of his impression or his image. When he came to Celtic, he was obviously being courted by Stoke and some other Premiership clubs. Cardiff was on the cusp of getting promoted themselves, and right. He decided to come to Celtic. But at the time, he's young. He has his entire career in front of him, and the trajectory was that a lot of people rated him based on what they expected of him, how they expected him to progress, and it was seemingly open-ended, in terms of how good of a central midfielder he could become, sweet left foot, all of that. Now he's had several years playing for Celtic. He's a known commodity at this point. And, we can talk until we're blue in the face about, there isn't that much of a drop-off between Celtic and some of these mid-table English clubs. the image is that it is a huge drop off. So now he goes to Crystal Palace, a side that's fighting relegation, and unless he goes in and he has a sparkling performance for Crystal Palace week after week, he's not going to get the attention of these elite EPL sides. I mean, maybe Stoke would go back in for him after Crystal Palace gets relegated, or one of those types of clubs, Sunderland, or maybe a West Brom. We always mention them, but his ability to sort of attain that creme de la creme status, I think, has passed him by, and it's especially passed him by considering he went to a club like Crystal Palace.
Well, for me, not for nothing, Ledley will always be that 1-0 goal that he had against the Huns. But that being said, goodbye, farewell. We know what we had in Ledley, and that's great. And I wish him the best, just the same way I'm going to wish Samaras the best when he goes.
Oh, God,
that being said, he's not the first professional athlete to kind of play a little cover your ass after he's left town for more money or whatever. I wish him the best, but I don't take anything to heart that he says because it's all irrelevant to me now because he's not with Celtic. So whatever he says at this point is just kind of like white noise.
Rev, your thoughts? I mean, obviously the performance, as I mentioned before, of Beaton and Johansson side by side there does sort of, sting, I guess, take away some of the sting for us. But, the combination of us moving on and moving on quite well, combined with, I don't know if I'd consider it like sour grapes, but it almost reminds me of like, your parents tell you to clean your room or do your chores or whatever, and you don't do it all day, and then they ground you because you did, and you're like, oh, you know what, I was just about to clean my room, but you grounded me. I mean, it's bullshit. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know if he's just trying to overall save face for, his image to, like you said, to other clubs, or if he's trying to just make a little, we, as Celtic fans, I don't think there's anyone that hates him. We're disappointed he left, but I don't think anyone really holds him in contempt for it. So if he's trying to save face for Celtic fans just so he has, a pretty squeaky clean image, as far as we're concerned as the years go on, I think that's unnecessary. And if anything, he probably harmed his image a little bit by saying that. I mean, in a couple of years, even a couple months, we're going to forget he said this, really. No one's going to remember it. But, it's kind of like if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Like, he didn't have to say anything.
Exactly.
And everything would have been fine, more or less, But by saying it, then it's like, well, what's the deal then? Why did you do that? If you really wanted and you were really ready to Celtic and you're telling all the other boys on the team you're going to stay, then why didn't you sign it right away? They didn't wait till the end of the transfer window to make, to offer him a new contract. And it's like,
it was levied for months.
Right. It's not like, but, Crystal Palace just beat you out in the 11th hour type shit. No, like, it's been known. It was there. And he, an employee, he hedged his bets and, he went for the more money and, hey, whatever. That's what he did. But, to make these comments, retroactively about what happened, there's no need for it, and he would have been better off not doing it.
Yeah, and another comment he made was he was just weighing up his options. Well, I'm so you just directly contradict yourself by saying that. You can't say, oh, well, I'm going to resign because I love it here, and then in the next breath say, oh, I'm going to weigh up my options. Well, you know what? The club at some point needs to weigh up their options as well, and considering the fact that it looked like he wasn't going to resign, the option was, we're going to get some money for you before you leave for free in the summer like you did for your boyhood club. Sorry, right. Joe. That's just the way it is. And I think it's a reasonable sort of assumption to say, all right, maybe, he needed to make a comment to maybe, in his mind, sort of endear himself, or I guess, express some sort of regret to the Celtic supporters to maybe up his image and make it seem like, he didn't just go without thinking about it. But it was a clumsy way that he communicated that, if indeed that's what he was trying to do.
I just think it's like the whole Pulp Fiction thing with the Wolf. He's just, he's a guy who's just someone who's not going to be missed. I mean, you look back and wish best for the guy, but in hindsight, I think we're doing far better with replacing him with youth. I think he was a known quantity. He was nothing, overly exceptional. He was good, not great,
Right.
but certainly not someone who couldn't be replaced.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I just have far less regret, at this point for the fact that, we got rid of him when we did. And I just don't see us missing him, all that much. I think that, let's be honest, nobody knew what Johansson was going to bring to the table. Just like we didn't know, what Wanyama was going to bring or Van Dijk was going to bring to a certain extent. But Johansson, at least to this point, looks the business. And in the process, he's made Beaton an exceptional player in the process, so far. So,
we could be seeing a totally different tune if after he left in the last 3 games, we did shit in the cup, but, in the last 3 league games, if our midfield just got, completely ran over and steamrolled and, other teams are scoring and, we didn't get, or, Fraser Forster didn't get his records and stuff, then we could look and be like, yeah, we definitely lost out there by losing Ledley. But, the things happened the way they did, and it seems that, it's okay if not better, so it's all good.
Yeah.
Well, I think things were probably better prepared for this week too, coming off of what happened against Aberdeen, that the midfield was more of a point of emphasis after they got run over by Robson and Flood.
Yeah.
That still doesn't change the fact, Bruni's game still looks as uneven as ever. He still looks slow as fuck. And he usually steps up his game at Tynecastle too, but it's like...
But I think he's so much better suited on that right side as opposed to being, more centrally located, especially when, there's just a midfield pairing of 2 players. I think that he does much better on the right-hand side of a midfield of 3 or even 4.
But that's still something that's going to be, have to be addressed at some point because, again, Bruni's not getting any younger either. It's not for nothing. We might have seen the best part of his game already. And at some point, you're going to have to kind of keep, well, not you, but Lowell, Lenny, if he's still here, they're going to have to keep their eyes on potential replacements at some point for him as well.
Yeah, no question. Now joining us is Brendan. Brendan, you're calling from London, right?
Derby.
Derby. Okay, fantastic. Welcome to the show, pal. We're just discussing sort of this Joe Ledley situation. Obviously, he came out this week, made some comments about. I think it was clumsy, in my opinion, talking about he was just about to sign, but they accepted a deal, so he had to go. I'm sorry, I'm not buying that.
No, I think it was bullshit, basically, wasn't it? The deal was on the table for a few months. He had every chance to sign it. Why would you wait till the last day of the transfer market? End of the day, Celtic, he didn't sign. Celtic got some money for him. Don't get me wrong. When he scored that goal against the Huns a couple of years ago, put his top.
Yeah.
Give him one of the best nights the last couple of years. Been a good servant. Been a good servant for Celtic. Rated him as a player. But when players go, I'm not really interested in, to be honest, Graham.
Yeah.
I'm only interested in the ones that stay in and the ones that might come in. So I don't know why he come out with that because it's like Yampy said. He's sort of got, or so the Rev said, he's sort of gone. It settled down, and then he sort of brought it back up again.
Yeah,
I think he's missing us more than we're missing him.
Exactly right. I think that's an exceptional point with this, and speaks to the comment why it was made, and just the fact that it was made in such a clumsy way. But also from our perspective, as we've mentioned several times, I want to get your thoughts on this. It does that the loss of him is blunted significantly by the play that has picked up from Beaton and Johansson.
Oh, superb. I thought Beaton today, for me, was man of the match. I don't think he misplaced a pass. Whether it's 5 yards, 10 yards, or whatever, he can pick a pass. Simple passes as well. Nothing spectacular. Just passes that keep the game flowing. And he's great. He's great at covering for Van Dijk. When Van Dijk goes forward, he just sits in there and he picks the pieces up. And I think he has to get a run of games to the end of the season now.
I agree.
That shape suits how we play.
I agree completely. And the thing that surprised me the most, obviously we're starting to see a lot of, sort of the fanfare that he got when we brought him in. He's got an exceptional passing range. He was rated for, his composure on the ball and setting up opportunities, more of the creative element. But the thing that I've been most surprised about in these past couple of weeks, especially, is how strong he is on the ball. And he's showing a tendency to be good in the tackle as well, busting up play, as it comes through the center of the park, and that's extremely useful. Playing that deep lying, it's not even a deep lying playmaker. He's a defensive midfielder, almost in the Busquets role, but with the passing range that he has, it's phenomenal to watch.
And what he does, he anticipates a lot of stuff, doesn't he? You can see him. You can see he's watching where that ball's going to go, and he's nipping in there and he's winning it. And he's just playing nice and simple. Johansson today, I thought he was superb as well.
Yeah. He
just never stops running. There was one where they broke down the right-hand side. He covered back, basically what Joe Ledley would do. He came across the penalty box, and the guy had to foul him in the end.
Exactly.
So he can go both ways, but I agree with you. He's more of a forward-thinking player when he gets the ball. His head's up, and he's looking for that bar down the side or over the top. And I think Griffiths will get a lot of goals on the back of his passing.
Agreed. Yeah, I think Johansson has every bit of the look of like it's another cliche, but I mean, he is starting to show tendencies of a box-to-box midfielder. You know, I mean, he as he demonstrated today, specifically with the play that you're bringing up, he has a tendency to track back. He can do that quite well, and he never stops running. He's good in the tackle, obviously, but you know he can spring forward, and I mean, he's not afraid to spring that slide real pass, you know, and try and cut open traffic, take 4 or 5 players out with one pass, and that's exactly what we've been missing. Something that I think Ledley, perhaps didn't bring as much to the table, but Beaton, Van Dijk, and Ambrose. I know Ambrose gets a lot of stick. Obviously, it carries on from the Juventus debacle, but I still rate him. And I think that partnership, those three there, read the game so well, and that has just as much of an impact or just as much of a credit to Fraser Forster's record than anything, really.
Oh, definitely. I mean, a year ago, I was all for Ambrose being shown the door. I mean, he's turned me around. This season, he's been superb alongside Van Dijk. I think Van Dijk takes a lot of credit for that. You still get the odd occasion where he just tries one cut inside too many and he gets caught. But luckily, we haven't been punished for it. But no, I mean, he's had a superb season. And I'll put my hands up this time last year. And I think probably on reflection it was a bit unfair because he should never have played the Juventus game. I think Lenny made a massive mistake there, and I think that basically ruined his season. A lot of people were looking for the mistakes, and as soon as he made a mistake, they were on his back at Parkhead.
Exactly.
So Lennon didn't do many favours, but this season, really, he's been superb.
Exactly. Yeah, and listen, this show has
on that one too with that lineup selection against Juventus. Because you're right, FA should never have played that game.
Yeah. Yeah. And, thinking back, I mean, we had, I believe it was a League Cup semifinal that we played maybe a week or so beforehand, where I want to say it was, did Rania get a run out? At center half because we had some injury issues. FA was gone for the entire month of January. Kelvin Wilson, I think, was struggling with an injury, and we had Mulgrew. I know we have Mulgrew in the center of the park, but Lenny wanted Mulgrew, more of like more of a midfield role to try and break up, that Juventus, their wing backs. I mean, obviously they're going to play in a 3-5-2. I don't know. It's all water under the bridge at this point, but it's great to see, that middle. I would almost consider it a middle three of, as I referenced before, of Van Dijk, Beaton now, and Ambrose, where they have the ability to break out wide, and give a wide option for Forster to play the ball out of the back, and then Beaton drops back, through the center. It does, especially going up against, teams like Hearts that are only going to have one striker. I mean, now all of a sudden that one striker, if he's going to press, he has 3 different options that he's going to need to press against. That's a lot of work, that he's going to have to go through. So, these are the types of little things that, keep it interesting. I mean, obviously, we can wrap the league up in March at some point. I haven't done the math yet, and it's something that, obviously we'll start looking at here. But these are the type of things that are going to be interesting. Seeing how this puzzle is going to fit together, seeing how, we can get the best out of certain players. And, that midfield pairing of Beaton and Johansson is certainly one of those key situations.
I think... sorry, Graham. I think Yampi made a good point regarding Bruni. I think once Lustig's fit, he's got to come back in the right back at some point. So that, to me, I'd push Matthews forward one. And I think Bruni might be looking over his shoulder for his place. Don't get me wrong. I think he's still worth his place in the team. But I think maybe a year down the line, if everybody's playing well, he might be the one to lose out because of the shape we're playing.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's
too. Bruni's almost 29 years old.
Yeah.
Turns 29 in June. He's not, like I said, man, we take it for granted because we've had Bruni around so long. He's kind of been like a rock there. But he's starting to, if you give a little stick to Samaras and talk about his age, well, then you kind of got to give a little to Bruni, too, because he's right behind him.
Well, and it's I mean, you can get into the weight of the armband, if you will, and the fact that Samaras has ever worn the armband is just mind-boggling to me. But it's the type of thing that you're right. I mean, he's not getting any younger. And one thing that I'm surprised about, specifically with Scott Brown, is, especially considering the way he plays, how durable he's been this season. I mean, you're almost expecting at some point his body's going to break down. I mean, last season there was issues with his hip, and the talk was that it was degenerative and may take years off of his career. And yet, this season, I mean, he really hasn't been out, for any, obviously, except for when he kicked Neymar up the backside. But he in spite of the way that he plays, he's incredibly durable for this point in his career, and especially with the way he plays. And that's another opportunity in my mind. I'm not so sure that Neil Lennon is going to want to follow through with this, but we are, as I mentioned before, considering the fact that we're going to have these qualifiers in July once again, we're going to need to be at the top level very early on in the season. I think it's absolutely vital to give essentially all of our first team players an extended break, to give them, ample time to be able to recover. And Scott Brown is definitely at the top of the list of those players. After we have the league wrapped up, we don't have any more cup ties. Give Scott Brown 2, 3, 4 weeks off. Let him let his body recover.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think Van Dijk, Commons, Bruni, maybe one or two others, you can give them a nice rest, getting ready for the qualifiers. The league's won; it's in the bag. Bring some other young players in, give them a taste of the first team.
Yeah,
what's the problem with that? I'm not that bothered about being unbeaten for the season, are you?
No.
I'm glad Foster got his record today, but if we'll have to lose 2 or 3, but we give 2 or 3 of the younger players an extended run, I'd like to see Baldy and Griffiths play together.
Agreed.
See what Griffiths plays like off him.
Agreed. Yeah, definitely. That, in my opinion, that would be exciting because Griffiths gives you that sort of poacher's element. And I think that he does a lot of things quite well. Obviously Stokes had some ropey moments today. He definitely was a key component in setting up Griffiths' goal. Let's not kid ourselves, but so many opportunities, where we're building up, going through the middle, and he seems to be caught in two minds. He's and one opportunity, he's got Scott Brown on one side and Pookie on the other, or was it? Yeah, it was Pookie on the other, and it's like he takes himself, gets dispossessed, and it's like you just want him to free up, and as more and more games sort of stack up on top of each other where you're starting to see that from Stokes. He's in some people's minds falling into that same category that you got from Ambrose last season, where every time he makes a mistake, people tend to pile on him. Oh, see, that's Stokes. He's shite. When let's not kid ourselves. I mean, let's not forget last week he scored a hat trick.
Well, exactly. I mean, the problem with last week was that was a one-off game. Most of the season since he signed his contract, he's been shot. Let's be honest. He's been picked on reputation more than anything else, and I love Stokesy. Do you know what I mean? Don't get me wrong, but I do believe that you should pick on form, not pick on the name. Yeah. If somebody gets in the side and plays well, i.e. Darnell Fisher, I was disappointed he was dropped.
Yep, not even a spot on the bench either.
He played well.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he did nothing wrong to get dropped. Now he can't find a place on the bench, but you see Samaras traveling. I don't understand that logic, but for me, Samaras should be training with the U20s. At this point,
I think the Samaras situation, Graham. I think Lennon thinks he might re-sign. I think that's the only reason why he's putting him on the bench, because I think him. But I think Sammy's time's come. I think he's been a good servant. I think it's time for him to move on, and I wouldn't put him on the bench. There's no point.
Yeah, the writing's on the wall. If he was going to resign, he would have by now. It's clear that Peter Lawwell is not going to offer him the sort of wages that he thinks he's entitled to. So, I mean, we can have bad blood, or it can be bitter or whatever. But I think that you're right. Neil Lennon rates Georgios Samaras quite highly, and he's still holding out hope that he's going to resign. I mean, you hear these comments coming from Lennon that we got to figure out a way to keep him happy and pick his head up. But is keeping him on the bench and not really playing him, is that what we need to do? And even if he does pick his head up and he does become happy again, whatever that entails, is that going to inspire Peter Lawwell to give him the sort of deal that he wants? Probably not. These are issues and criteria that are out of Neil Lennon's control. They're out of Georgios Samaras' control. And at some point, you just need to look at reality and move on.
Yeah, every player has a shelf life, don't they? I think Samaras has come to the end. We're now rebuilding Lennon's rebuilding another side now for hopefully a qualification for next year's Champions League. If you think the squad we had last year and what's left the club, if you take into account, if you say obviously Ledley's gone, Wanyama, Hooper, Wilson, Sammy, that's basically the backbone of the side a year ago. We're now trying to get players bedded in ready for this qualification in July.
Yeah.
So Sammy's been a good servant, but it's time for him to move on. There's no point putting him on the bench because he doesn't really give us anything. Whether the league's won, it doesn't really matter whether he comes on and scores. It's just a case of let's get the players in who are going to be here next season.
Yeah, if Lennon thinks that keeping Sammy happy is somehow going to spur this deal on, I'm sorry. The basis for Georgios Samaras staying at Celtic lies solely with Peter Lawwell, and Peter Lawwell doesn't care whether Sammy's happy or not. Peter Lawwell looks at the bottom line and he says, right, this is what we're going to pay you based on your productivity and where you are in your career, and that's the reality. And the reality is he's going to move on. That's just the bottom line. There was a rumor this week that Ruben Kazan was in for him, that their transfer window closes a bit later in Russia, but Ruben Kazan was rumored to have offered Sammy $60,000 a week and he turned it down. I can't believe, I don't know what dimension possibly this could have come from, but I just, that's just mind-boggling. Number one, I can't believe that Ruben Kazan would offer him that kind of money. I mean, maybe they have crazy, stupid money that they throw about in Russia, with all that natural gas and oil money. But I can't believe that Samaras would be the sole target for them. And then, with that extent, I can't believe that Georgios Samaras would turn down trebling his wages.
There's no way.
No, sorry, no, that's all right. No, you go ahead, man.
There's no way on God's green earth that they were offering him that. What fucking planet would you have to be able to be living in to sit there and say that you could justify those kinds of wages? What has he done recently that would justify those kinds of wages? If you apply any kind of sentient activity to that kind of information, you're going to realize that that's got to be a bunch of shit.
Well, and then the follow-up comment, the supposed comment from Sammy in terms of his logic for not doing it was, he doesn't want to go to Russia because it's too cold. I'm sorry. I've been to Glasgow and Edinburgh in November and February. It is not warm. Right.
I think that was a bit of bullshit there, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I just, for the life of me, I can't see how that could possibly be justified. Van Dijk was left off of the Dutch international team for some of their spring friendlies. That's another one that's a bit of a head-scratcher. I just don't understand how, given the fact that Van Dijk has played in the Champions League, and I think he provided a good account of himself throughout that, and that takes away his domestic form, which has been absolutely outstanding. When you compare him to some of the center half options that they have in that Dutch team, I think he's head and shoulders above any of them. I mean, we saw some of the selections in the Ajax team. I didn't see much out of that Ajax team that would have me think, the defenders. I mean, especially that Blinda, at left back. I mean, obviously Van Dijk isn't a left back, but they include him and the other center half from Ajax. They didn't do anything to impress me. I hope this isn't a foreshadowing for the World Cup side that he's going to be left off, but it's just mind-boggling to me.
Well, I'm quite happy about that, to be honest, in a selfish way, because I think if it doesn't go to the World Cup, I think we've got him for another year. I think if it goes to the World Cup, we'll lose him in August.
He's gone. Yeah, no question about it. I think that if he does get selected for that World Cup side, he will play his last game for Celtic in May. He'll go to the World Cup. I would expect him to get some sort of time, and he is going to have attention. That Dutch side is going to be one of the teams to watch, in spite of the fact that they are a self-combusting, just time bomb. And they have quality all over the pitch to a large extent. But I mean, they can't help themselves but fight amongst themselves in the dressing room. But nonetheless, everybody always looks to the Dutch team, and that's going to be something that's going to get attention and something that would get him attention. And to your point, I think it's going to be irresistible. You can start the bidding right now at 12.5 because that's what we sold Wanyama for. But I'd be surprised if we got any less than that, and I would firmly expect it would be in excess of that. Considering the type of player he is, how young he is. I mean, think about it. I mean, he's 22 years old. That's unbelievable. And his wife is smoking hot.
Yeah, well, think about. Sorry.
No, go on,
Well, just think about Vidic and Ferdinand at Man United. Vidic's going. Ferdinand's the wrong side of 30. They desperately need a centre half. If Van Dijk goes to the World Cup and gets a few games, in my opinion, he's gone to Man United.
Agreed.
And you're right. We should be getting 15 for him, shouldn't we?
Agreed. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Especially, considering some of the prices that Man United throw out there. $15 million for a center half of that quality would be a bargain. What did they pay for Ferdinand? $35 million or whatever it was.
Yeah, silly money with Leeds, wasn't
it? They still went bust. It's going to be an interesting transfer window, from my perspective. But nonetheless, there's still a lot to pay attention to and to get excited about, with this Celtic side. I mean, listen, I watched every game, in the run into, the Mowbray season where, we lost the league early on or relatively early on, obviously. All hope was essentially lost. We crashed out to Ross County. There really wasn't much to play for after that. I still watched every one of those games. Now we're winning the league in a canter. Certainly going to watch every one of these games, but it's going to be far more pleasant. Certainly. So lots of good things to think about and to watch. This past week, and I want to open this up to everybody. This past week there was a Celtic supporters forum that was held at Celtic Park. And there was a select group of invitees. Let me read out who was who attended, who was invited. All of the affiliations, so the Celtic Supporters Association, the Irish Association, the affiliation of Celtic Supporters Clubs, North American Fed, etc. Then you have a group of bloggers, and let me just read out some of the names here: Maley's Boys, Celtic Underground, Celtic Quick News, and then they also mentioned that there were unaffiliated season ticket holders from Ireland and Scotland. Not the View, E-Tims, and Cyber Tims were invited and didn't attend. How is it that the club thinks that they are going to reach out in the spirit of sort of open-handed communication, wide-ranging? How is it that they think that inviting a select group of people, how that's going to further this effort? I don't understand it. This was revealed a couple of weeks ago at the Celtic Trust meeting, that they were going to have bloggers in to talk about these issues. How is it that they're going to narrow down people who are, listen, I'll speak for myself. Obviously any blogger or podcast or whatever, they're going to have their own agenda with it. So how is it that this is even productive? Yampi, let me start with you.
I don't think it's a select group at all. It sounds like anybody that is not a Green Brigade member. It's like anybody could show the fuck up. They might as well name 50 different organizations and supporters and bloggers. And as long as you weren't a Green Brigade member, it sounds like you got a fucking invite. That being said, I actually did read that rather lengthy diatribe. The one thing I found interesting on there, somebody asked a question on it. I forget what page it was on, but it was like somebody was like addressed the club if they were going to create a radio show to kind of counter certain opinions and stuff.
Yes.
What? I mean, are you serious? It's like they need to, like, they're going to come up with, instead of trying to address the main issue, is their issue with the Green Brigade, they're going to come up with all this other spin to kind of like counter what the Green Brigade do and what the people actually want by listening to podcasts such as this one. I mean, they have to do a counter kind of like propaganda thing.
Well, now to be fair, and let me just make this point. You can interpret this a couple different ways, and I certainly don't want to be, so self-involved that I just assume that they're talking about, any one of the podcasts. We'll leave it at that. But I think that there can be an interpretation that this was levied so that the club would set up a weekly radio, podcast, internet show, whatever you want to call it, to counter Super Scoreboard or BBC Scotland or something like that. But the interesting bit of verbiage that sort of stood out to me that makes me have some questions is, the question that was levied verbatim was, would the club consider the introduction of a weekly phone-in show to combat existing shows which often provide misinformation or unrealistic comparisons from unqualified sources? So now, okay, you can interpret that as saying, they're talking about Super Scoreboard, whatever, but, the line, unrealistic comparisons from unqualified sources. So you're basically saying that, Hugh Keevins, you're basically, if you're paying credence to that statement, you're basically calling out Hugh Keevins, Keith Jackson, the rest of the mainstream media, essentially, which we know the higher-ups at Celtic are quite cozy with. So that's where I sort of have a bit of a conflict with that, or at least a bit of questioning. Who exactly are you talking about with this? And who exactly are the enemy with this, if that, is indeed the case. I certainly want to play devil's advocate with that and not jump to conclusions, but it does seem kind of interesting how that was worded. Are they going to try and set up something so that, they can, and this is the overriding goal of this board, to control the message. That's the reason why they have issues with the Green Brigade. They can't control them. And obviously, if you listen to more than one of this show or, any of the Hail Hail Media shows, they obviously can't control us. I don't know. Brendan, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, when you read that, when you hear that, what's your first thought?
Well, the reason I listen to shows like this and shows like the Homeboys is because it caters for guys like myself. We can come on here, let off steam, swear if we want to swear. We'd have to be PC correct. Anything the PC, they're actually missing the point of what the internet's about, aren't they? The internet's for everybody. It's all about freedom of speech. What they're trying to do is control anything that they see as negative towards not so much the club, the PLC.
Exactly.
But they missed the point. They missed the point totally. It's because of shows like yours and the Homeboys was the two main ones that I listened to. I can download them, and you get ordinary guys coming on like myself, just making a point.
Exactly.
I don't want to phone up Radio Clyde and listen to all the bullshit there. I don't want to phone up Celtic if they create their own show, because if they created their own show and the first call they get was a negative call against the board or the PLC, you'd be cut off. So what's the point of doing that?
Exactly. And then it runs into, the same sort of dilemma that you have with Super Scoreboard. And these are valid questions that we have. These are valid, very earnest questions, in good faith.
If they were clever, they'd be listening to these shows and they'd be taking on board the points that ordinary supporters are making and acting upon them.
Exactly.
Like the Celtic Trust, for me, I subscribe to it. It's only a tenner a year. When we had the AGM, most people that I follow on Twitter or listen to on these shows were all for the club paying a living wage. Where's that gone? That's been pushed to the background.
Well, it was basically cast aside with a clever joke about Sevco. It's all deception.
Yeah. For me, if they paid the living wage, my estimation in the PLC would go tenfold.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly right.
You can't say at a club like no others when basically you're doing what every other club is doing and basically paying people peanuts.
Yeah, exactly. And another issue, another topic with this meeting and the context behind it that I'm confused about, and I mean I think it really just illustrates the picture of who we're dealing with here with this PLC is. One of the key components of this meeting was talking about the Green Brigade. I mean, obviously, it's a hot button issue for everybody. Obviously, you have people who don't like the Green Brigade, want them tossed out. They don't like any of the songs. They think they're better, whatever. But you have a sizable amount of the support who, even if they don't agree with everything that they stand for or everything that they sing, they see the value in having the Green Brigade present. That was clear just by the atmosphere at Celtic Park against St. Johnson last week, which was a far cry from the previous week when the place was dead except for the Aberdeen supporters singing songs about Jimmy Savile. So you can make your point about your derision towards the Green Brigade all you want, but what you can't argue is the fact that they elevate the atmosphere, which is a vital element. So this is what they did that they thought was productive, and this is what basically it illustrates the point of who we're dealing with. What is the current position in respect to the Green Brigade? This is a question that was levied at this meeting. Now, why would you invite, obviously the affiliation and the Celtic Supporters Association and the Fed from North America and the different bodies from that. Okay, I get why they're having them there. They represent a lot of Celtic supporters, and they come. Essentially, relatively speaking, without too much of an agenda. But you invite Celtic Underground, Celtic Quick News, all these different blogs. So you're inviting all of these other people who have agendas to talk about the Green Brigade, and you don't invite the Green Brigade? So you've opened up a forum to talk about a section of the support with other sections of the support. How is it? How does that? How does that? How does that? Raise any sort of specter like you're operating in any sort of good faith. They then go on to talk about, well, although no members of the Green Brigade are present at the meeting, given this issue is a source of much discussion amongst supporters, it was felt that it was appropriate to answer the question. What? What? You got to justify to yourself even answering this question? Please.
Graham, there was a guy on Homeboys last year who basically was attending a meeting
Steve
that Laurel
Kearney
was present at.
Yeah.
Was that his name?
Steve Kearney from the affiliation.
He put it on the table that Laurel wants to get rid of the Green Brigade. I've always remembered that guy. He came across as genuine to me, and that's the bottom line. They don't want the Green Brigade there because of the political side of it. They're trying to be PC friendly because the ultimate game is, in theory, is to get down to England. And they don't want to bring any of that down to England if there's ever a chance of them getting there. So that's why they don't want the Green Brigade there. That's the bottom line, in my humble opinion, obviously.
Now, they go on to further say, the club can confirm that if a relationship with the Green Brigade can be developed, then attendance of their members at future meetings would, of course, be discussed with them. So, at the last Celtic Trust meeting, members of the Green Brigade were invited and were attended. And by the way, there weren't any special invitations. The Celtic Trust meetings are open to anybody. So if you want to turn up and you're a Celtic supporter, you can turn up and you can say your piece. That's, in my opinion, that's a good faith measure to try and get issues out in the open. But the club then says if they can establish a relationship or they can establish any sort of communication, the Green Brigade at the last Celtic Trust meeting came with emails, with documented proof that they had emailed the club repeatedly and hadn't been answered back. It goes back to the food bank. With the food drive going towards the food bank the week after the Green Brigade were kicked out of the stadium. And the Green Brigade reached out to the club, to try and get any sort of resources they could or any sort of approval. And the club didn't respond to them. And they've had repeated attempts to contact the club, and it's documented. There are emails that can be populated where they emailed them and they didn't respond back. So it's a bull-faced lie. This claim from the club that there hasn't been any contact and we can't establish any sort of communication, and we tried to reach out, but the Green Brigade aren't interested in communicating back. It's a lie.
Well, Graham, not for nothing, man. It's like we've talked about this before as well. Understand who Lowell is. He's a guy he's a control guy, man. And he's going to do, it's like laying the groundwork. It's kind of the way the U.S. laid the groundwork with the whole Iraq war and it was weapons of mass destruction. Turn public sentiment around the way you want it. That's what Lowell's going to do. He's going to bring these guys in, CQN, all them, make them feel real special. Oh, they got a personal invite. You guys are real good supporters. And then it's like, okay, well, we're all going to have this little rip job of the Green Brigade because we get all this little swell of public sentiment, and the club's like, oh, so we are justified in the way we treated them and having them kettled and having their doors kicked in and dispersing them throughout the stadium and having their tickets taken away. So we were justified. It's kind of like it takes anybody that might have been on the fence about it and kind of like it's the club just laying that groundwork, showing them, oh, okay, we know who the good guys are, and we're sure of that now because the club has laid it out for us because we're good sheep and follow along, and we know who the bad guys are now, and it's definitely the Green Brigade. That's what Lowell's doing. That's why you're like we said there, man. That's why they're going to talk about we'll have a radio show, and then we could put out our spin to even more people who might be on the fence of it. He's creating a club that anybody that doesn't perfectly align with the identity that he wants to put out there for this club is kind of going to be pushed to the periphery.
They're not welcomed. And he said that. Yeah, he said that. That particular element, whatever it is not welcome at the club. And it goes on to further state, and this is where it gets down to brass tacks, or at least it should. Do the club believe, this is a question that was levied, do the club believe that their response to the Motherwell situation was justified and proportionate? They go on to for the life of me, I can't understand how in the world someone with a coherent brain can come up with something that makes so little sense. They say, we believe that the vast majority of the support backed the club on this matter. Really? Really? I need whatever you're smoking, because listen, whatever they are smoking to believe that is way beyond whatever the hell Rev gets with his medical marijuana shit. They go on to say
that's some good shit.
It's some good shit. They go on to say
line about if you tell people a lie enough times that eventually they'll believe it.
They go on to say Celtics suffered substantial reputational damage as a result of significant physical damage to Fir Park on December 6th, which obviously we saw. There were seats broken, and that much I think we can all agree on. What they can't lay the direct blame to is whether or not it was the Green Brigade. They go on to say there was overwhelming evidence that a large group of fans had occupied a section of the lower tier which they did not have tickets to.
It don't fucking matter though.
Are you talking about Celtic Park? Are you talking about Fir Park? What the hell are you talking about with this? They then go on to say on this basis, the club immediately suspended the season tickets of those involved, pending further investigation. Those involved, you can't prove that any of those people that sit in a certain section of the lower tier were involved.
Boxing Day, Dens Park, 2012, the supposed riot never took place. Bearing in mind everybody's got a smartphone with a camera on and a video, not one bit of evidence has been put on YouTube or online to say that happened. Yet you had John Hartman was coming out, Burley was coming out. Basically all the strip takers were coming out condemning the fans for something that never happened. The club were one of the first to come out and condemn the fans for something that never happened. So that tells you what the PLC think about their own fans.
And contrast that with when Sevco played us the last time at Celtic Park, and there was video of the Huns in the bathroom at halftime, completely trashing the place. Cops in the bathroom. And they did nothing. Nobody arrested. Seats broken afterward. Nothing done. Sevco wasn't leading the charge to arrest their own supporters. Nothing ever came of that, despite the fact that you can go on YouTube right now and look it up. There's a 10-minute video of it. Yet, Peter Lowell's like pushing and knocking people the fuck out of the way. Oh my God, we had a seat broken at Fir Park. You guys need to have our own fans. You need to arrest my customers because we need that small segment of bad guys because we get rid of them, we get the identity that we want with the club, and everything is great in Happy Land.
They finish up by saying, given that no charges were brought against anyone within this group, the suspensions were lifted at the earliest opportunity. So once again, they fail to prove that anyone in 111 was in that particular section, but what they don't highlight is the fact that they didn't give them their seats back. They spread them out throughout the ground, wherever the hell, and most people aren't going to accept that. Most people aren't going to be held to account or held responsible for something and take punishment for something that they had no involvement with. That's insulting. So basically, this is the Peter Lowell, book this is his strategy. It's deceive through delusion. It's when you bring an issue to the fore, he claims he either claims ignorance or he deflects, and that's exactly what happened here. He deflects away, and rather than answering the direct question, which is, how is it that you essentially kick the Green Brigade out for an offense that was proven, that you acknowledge was proven that they had nothing to do with? How do you kick them out and then hold them, out of the ground indefinitely? Those two things don't add up. And are there people at this meeting who are going to follow up and ask these questions and hold them to account? Of course not.
Absolutely not.
The problem for Peter Lowell is there's a lot of Celtic fans that do back the Green Brigade. Yeah, there's a lot that don't, but there's a lot that does. He's frightened of alienating them fans that do because he knows in the long term it will cost lost revenues in ticket sales. I think he's in for a big shock this summer. I'll be surprised if we sell 30,000. I think what you'll probably get next summer, if Sevco manage to get back into the league, you'll get an upsurge in tickets because people will, like it or not, will buy a season ticket for the 4 games against them the year after. But I think Celtic, if they sell 30,000 this summer, they'll do well. But he's frightened of alienating the support that do back the Green Brigade. So he's in a rock and a hard place.
Oh, and he's trying to play both sides of the fence while continuing to vilify this section of the support and trying to convince the rest of the support that these are indeed the evil parties. He's essentially trying to divide the support.
Well, that's why
he's done that, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why that safe standing makes a nice wild card. If not a lot of people re-up for the season tickets, then he can always say, like, oh, look, we're trying to make amends with the Green Brigade, da-da-da-da-da. But if he gets a lot of people to re-up, then he has leverage, and he can say, you know what? Well, we decided we don't want it after all, and we don't need this element here because we're doing all right without them. He's the consummate businessman, dude, and he's going to throw anybody under the bus he needs to get what he wants.
Another topic from the meeting that I want to touch on. The question was asked, attending matches is expensive. What are the club's plans on ticket pricing? They then go into talking about how great they are, patting themselves on the back for, inverted commas, rewarding supporters with a £100 reduction on season tickets. Rewarding supporters? I'm sorry, Peter, you're far too smart for this, okay? And so am I. I'm not an idiot. This is called supply and demand. You had a strong and significant decrease in season books that were sold the year previous, and you were forced to economically reduce the season book price that you had jacked up in seasons previous. This was called a correction, not a reward. It was a correction. But in the context of the question, which was, what are the club's plans? Future. What are the club's plans on ticket pricing? They go on to talk about the reduction in kids prices, bringing the £50 kids price back, and talking about income streams and what they did with the cup ties and so on and so forth. There's nothing in here that talks about what they're planning on doing in the future, in terms of reducing season books or making this a permanent reduction. They further then go on to say other clubs, Dundee United, Kilmarnock, Motherwell, have adopted cut price schemes which did not produce the desired effect and resulted in significant losses. We are not Dundee United, Kilmarnock, or Motherwell. We are Celtic. Those clubs always have had issues with drawing supporters. They have a smaller supporters base to draw on. We obviously, especially in the recent past, have been able to put. I mean, within the past 10 years, we put 50,000 in for a game against St. Johnson or whatever. This is an economic climate that precludes a lot of people. That makes a lot of people have to make decisions. And when it comes down to feeding your family or going to a football game, everybody knows what that decision's going to be. This is deluded thinking. They then go on to say there's a train of thought that having the prices would double attendances, but there's no evidence to support this. So if we accept, that we need a minimum to double attendances, it's a high risk strategy. And if it doesn't pan out, then it's going to do significant damage. And then they go on to say the net impact will mean that UEFA Champions League football becomes less and less likely, i.e., they're not going to spend as much. So basically, once again, they're going to hold supporters hostage. When we're already not spending the money that we have, and they're basically saying, if you don't turn up and you don't spend, the high prices that we're charging for season books, then we're not going to invest in the club, and Champions League football becomes less likely. I'm sorry, but I thought that their number one remit was the football, was trying to improve our chances to get to the highest level, i.e., the Champions League. And now they somehow do a heat reversal and put the blame back on supporters, who are struggling in this chronic recession when they're swimming in money. The CEO is paid £1 million a year. Please. That's a disgrace.
Heated driveway. Doesn't sound so ridiculous now when you hear me say that. I still am firmly 100% behind Lowell having to go. 100%. He should have been canned after the whole living wage thing. I mean, that was ridiculous unto itself. Totally flies in the face of everything the club was founded upon, and he don't give a fuck. No. He is an untrustworthy snake of a businessman, and that's the real deal. That's the reality of this conversation. Is the guy is untrustworthy, and he will do whatever he has to make a buck, and that's why he needs to go. He doesn't have people's interests at heart. He has his own interests at heart.
Now, there was some trepidation about... Sorry.
Did you hear what he said about the Kerrydale bar thing when someone asked him about, Somebody asked, with the success of the Currydale bar, are they going to look to follow that up? And he was like, oh, well, sometimes I've seen it wasn't very full. So, until it's completely supported, then we'll have to wait and see.
Well, and that's an issue in and of itself, where there's this short-term thinking, state of mind, where, oh, well, nobody turned up, the past couple of weeks, so I guess we're just going to pull the plug on that. It's an accountant's mindset. There isn't this entrepreneurial sort of ambition or vision, of growth. It's about, it's about a cash cow. We're only going to invest in things that, we can just sort of harvest the cash out right away, rather than trying to build something. Another issue where there's significant deflection is, the point was brought up with so many empty seats, these days, can the club not allocate some of these seats to good causes like schools or youth groups or community projects? It's a great question. They go on to talk about, how they provide free tickets for, they already do this sort of thing. They reference giving out, at a particular game, giving out, the Celtic Learning Center, which sits within the foundation, the Celtic FC Charitable Foundation. They give out 150 seats at a domestic match so far. So we have, on average, 150 other people at each domestic match so far in this season. So on a game where you've only sold 20,000 seats, you're giving out 150 free tickets? Really? While the Kano Foundation has never gotten jack shit from the club, the Kano Foundation year after year has to fundraise and do whatever they possibly can to raise the sort of funds so that they can bring their kids out. The club doesn't donate these seats to the Kano Foundation. The Kano Foundation is completely on their own, and they've expressed repeatedly frustration with the lack of cooperation that the club has in working with them on it. Familiar theme? Because they can't control the Kano Foundation. All of their donations of these tickets to the schools and everything has to come through the Celtic FC Charity Foundation because it can be controlled by them. All right, I'll move on.
You said it all. There's nothing to add, unfortunately. It's something you just kind of look at and kind of have to reflect on it and be like, it's pretty shitty,
Yeah, it's kind of like kicking a dead horse. The guy don't give a fuck whether you're a charitable organization that could benefit from it. He'll do what he thinks is in the best interest to maximize his profits, and that's it, dude.
It's a stunning lack of awareness of what's going on here to a select hand-picked few people, so that they can wine and dine them and and impress them and all sorts of shit. Give them all these little value adds, these little gifts, bringing them into the fold and then deflecting and then not answering any of the questions. The club is seen to be slow to react to key issues through the media. Why is this? This is one of the questions. They responded by saying, "We are not aware of any key issues where this has been the case." Hello?
Right.
They don't even provide a player for some of the Celtic supporter club's annual dinners.
No.
That's how bad it is. They don't even send a player. It should be in the player's contract. The ST10, in my view, the ST10 so many supporters functions throughout his contract. They don't even send players there.
And as a individual fan, first and foremost, what I do, in regards to the show and everything, that's separate. But just me as a fan, and on the day-to-day, the Monday to Friday, trying to get as much news and stuff and just be up to date as I can with the goings-on of the team, after an event like this, which, honestly, I admit I didn't even hear of until you brought it up earlier. These blogs that had people, represent them, and I don't mean it in, a dick way, but I'm just going to kind of rethink about where I get my sources from, my information from, down the road, because now, I don't know if these, if all these outlets are truly independent of themselves.
Exactly.
Or if they're getting, if they're going to be fed some information, or just like, oh, why don't you do a little thing on this, or not even so, deviously, but just like, because they're chummy, they're not going to want to say anything bad about the people that they're chummy with.
Exactly.
You won't be a listener to the Peter Lowell, Magner's post-game Celtics show.
I'd listen to that.
Yeah,
And you know, and listen, I don't want this to come off like, you know, we're sour grapes because Hail Hell Media wasn't invited. Quite the contrary. I don't think it's. I'm not upset because Hail Hell Media wasn't invited. I'm upset because any of these things were invited. You know, if anybody should be invited to these meetings, it should. I mean, immediately any of these blogs or podcasts should be immediately devalued because obviously there is an agenda. You know, having this access
Kind
and
of
then
compare it to something. Oh, sorry. I thought you broke up. No, to compare it to something that happened like over here, for example, one of the big U.S. sports bloggers, this guy Ivis, and he started out as a beat reporter for the Bergen Daily Record or whatever, Bergen Record, in North Jersey when MLS started, and he was kind of like the only guy that ever said anything about the then Metro Stars. When the Metro Stars switched over to the Red Bulls, the new regime didn't really care for him and kind of cut ties with him as a reporter. And so ever since that happened, he has just put down New York at every possible turn. You know, now he's one of the bigger guys. Now he does stuff for like ESPN and Fox. And on what started as just like a first, small newspaper role, then to his own blog, and now on a national and even international level, he still has this bias towards it. So that's kind of like the flip side over here. You know, you get guys who may be, doing it out of their own passion, their own love for the team, but then if they get in too deep with the team and people within the club, you're going to get the opposite spin from it. And that's just, from a neutral standpoint, that shouldn't be happening in either direction. You want to try to get the close to the real facts, the no bullshit, in overly critical of the team, because they have a vendetta, or too pally-pal because, they get, special treatment here and there, club box seats or whatever the case may be,
See, but I disagree with the term about, like the phrase. It's like, hey, this is nothing to do with sour grapes whatsoever. And if Lowell wants to keep it real, let him go in front of the trust and answer these questions and take questions from the people that show up for their meetings. It's
not that I want Hail Hell Media to have a seat at the table. I don't want any of these things to have a seat at the table. Are they representing? Are they bringing forth issues in a good faith measure? It's a direct conflict of interest.
It absolutely is. But he's only going to answer questions from people that he feels safe from. You think if he sat there in front of a crowded fucking room with someone like Parrott or Tommy or Paulie or something like that, they'd fucking kick him in the pants. He's not going to answer questions from people like that because he doesn't want to be held to the truth. He doesn't want people that are going to sit there and fucking make him accountable for the stuff that he's done.
Well, as evidenced in the response to this from the minutes to this meeting, it would be one thing if he actually answered the questions. They're not answering any of the questions. I mean, listen to this. Is this meeting recognition from the club that a gap exists between the club and the fans? Very fair question, right? The reason for the invitation was to meet in order for the club to continue to be proactive in its communication with supporters. Are you shitting me?
It's the fucking Texas dude.
Matt McGlone, I've listened to him a few times speak on various interviews. He made a very good point. He said the problem you've got when you're part of the inner circle is you haven't really got the ability to criticise from within. He said one of the worst things he did was actually work for the Celtic View. He now does not the Celtic View. So you have to step away from it to be critical, because
exactly.
when you're inside it,
exactly
you
right.
can't really say it how it is, sort of thing.
Exactly right, because you become a mouthpiece. You become addicted to the treats that are being thrown out there, and that affects your judgment. And getting back to the Rev's point about wondering who you're going to get your information from, it does make you think twice about the information that certain websites, certain blogs are putting out there, how much that's influenced by these favors and by, sort of this inclusion into the inner circle.
The Glasgow Trust has had, is it 2 meetings, 3 meetings, and the Celtic Supporters Club on London Road. And to my knowledge, not one member of the PLC has attended it to answer questions. So that tells you all you need to know. Yamp hit the nail right in the head. They don't want to be asked difficult questions by what I would class an ordinary fan, a guy in the street.
Those people that got invites should take a serious fucking look in the mirror. You didn't get an invite because you're a special Celtic supporter. You got a fucking invite because you're a fucking mouthpiece for somebody. And that's the reality. You got an invite because Mr. Law feels pretty safe bringing you around. He doesn't.
Yeah, if not directly already like a mouthpiece, but maybe they see potential there for it.
Right.
I think they've already judged the potential, and I think it's already being exploited. Let's not get ourselves in.
That survey's been done. Well, I'm going to shoot, lads, because my Chinese is at the door. So nice talking to you.
Cheers, Brendan.
Take care. All the best.
Take care.
Brendan got roped right into my whole spiel there.
It's Law. He's kicking in the door right now.
He's like,
focus here.
Ronnie Hawthorne to Derby immediately. He's like, what? Doncaster? He's halfway to Doncaster. Sorry, he's in Derby. Shall we do more delusion?
Yes, absolutely.
Fixture rescheduling at short notice is costing supporters money and ultimately driving fans away. Can the club seek an agreement with all the other clubs that a minimum notice period is put in place? Now, I interpret this as to go back to that Kilmarnock rescheduling from early January, where many supporters from Ireland and throughout the UK had made hotel arrangements, transport, months in advance for that specific date, and then a month before the fixture takes place, they reschedule it, basically, telling the supporters to go F themselves, leaving them with no recourse whatsoever, wasted money, and the club goes and fucks off the turkey for some, last minute, whatever it was, tournament with Ajax and friends. So their response is, despite efforts made by the SPFL, Spiffle, there is no definitive rules in relation to notice period required for broadcasters to give clubs when a match is selected for television. So basically, immediately, I mean, they know where this is coming from. They know what the complaints are. John Paul Taylor was in attendance at this meeting, and John Paul Taylor felt the fury of people, about that specific issue. That's what people were talking about, and the club then go and sort of deflect into blaming it on the TV companies. The TV companies had nothing to do with them going to Turkey.
Anything but Law. Again, they will put the blame wherever they need so they can come away looking spotless. He's the Teflon fucking CEO, man. Nothing will ever stick to him.
They say this season has thrown up some more issues than normal due to the main broadcaster's efforts to maximize their viewing figures. The main broadcaster had fuck all to do with Kilmarnock in early January, where you fucked your own supporters so that you could go off to Turkey. And that's what the question is about. So be a man and answer the fucking question.
I'm not going to do that, dude. And they won't ever give you a real explanation. Why? Because you'll never get an invite to any room they're in.
I could understand rescheduling a match, for inclement weather or something like that. There's nothing you can really do about that. Last minute, you get dumped a foot of snow or whatever, and yeah, you can't play in that. Or it's dangerous to have people go out to a game, and it's like trying to, book a cruise for September, to the Caribbean. It's like, well, that's the middle of hurricane season, so you're kind of taking a chance, and you could lose out. And it sucks if you do. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, to have it go and be something that's fairly avoidable, that's not how you treat your fans. That's if you're looking at yourself as a business, that's not how you treat your customers.
Again, he took the opportunity for a money grab for a series of games that would put more profit in the coffers of the PLC, and he didn't give a fuck who suffered as a result of it. And but again, he's going to, the PLC will make it look like it's the TV companies, it's the it's the federation, it's everybody but Lawwell and the PLC.
And you add in the fact that there are this hand-picked group of purveyors of websites, bloggers, etc., who also, in certain circumstances, have podcasts of their own. And then you look back and you think about the question, would the club consider the introduction of a weekly phone-in show to combat existing shows, which often provide misinformation or unrealistic comparisons from unqualified sources? I'm not saying they were having a go at Hail Media or whatever podcast, but all I'm saying is it makes you wonder.
Choice of the words, combat. Like, come on. Like, are we really misinformed here? I have eyes and a fucking brain between my ears. I mean, I did graduate college. I'm not a fucking moron here. You know, this is ridiculous. Are you really misinformed? You guys do more prep work than fucking 90% of the people that got an invite to, or probably more than 90% that got an invite to that goddamn fucking little blowjob powwow.
Blowjob powwow. Yep.
That's pretty much what it was. Everybody takes turns servicing the king.
That's pretty much it right there, bitch.
I didn't know Henrik Larsson was there.
Speaking of people that went to college and aren't morons, now joining us is Dr. J. Welcome to the party, Dr. J.
Hail, boys. How you doing?
Oh, we're just fantastic. We broke down the end of the game today, the ins, the outs, the what have yous, and we're talking about the Celtic supporters group meeting of a select few of invites, which, you know, it seems as though your name was omitted from this list. Do you feel slighted at all, considering your relationship with Peter Lawwell?
Kind of. To be honest with you, yeah, I do. Not my name personally, but the one thing that I made the comment on the other day on Twitter, and I still believe to the total end is, you know, once again, if you read all the club's answers to all the questions, it's always about who goes to the game, who has a ticket, who has this, who has that. Not one comment or care was given to anyone outside of Glasgow.
Yeah.
They couldn't care less. They don't know. They don't want to say what they're doing for anybody. They don't want to talk about, you know, what about, you know, because I've asked the question of John Paul before on Twitter before. Listen, what if I happen to be in Milan over the course of time and I've been a 5-year subscriber to Celtic TV, doesn't that give me some level of something?
Yep.
No.
Exactly.
I'm like, okay. I mean, I'm not saying that there's going to be 1,000 people that show up and say, listen, I have Celtic TV. I'm outside the US. I'm outside the UK. And, you know, therefore I want a ticket. You know, how many could it be? I mean, how many people that have Celtic TV that are outside the U.S. or outside the U.K. actually will end up going to a game? The one number I'd like to know, how many of those people, those overseas season tickets were purchased?
Well, and that brings up an interesting point as well, where, to your point, there wasn't much discussion about not just North America, but also Irish situation. Well, now there was, you know, some issues regarding ticketing and regarding, you know, the times when the matches are played, and that's a crucial bit of criteria for, you know, the Irish supporters. But to your point, you know, in terms of the ease with which we can get merchandise over here in North America, the ability to get players over for our conventions, the ability to get the trophies sent over. I mean, that's always been sort of stuck in our craw with this. And there wasn't one mention of that. There wasn't one sort of request, or that wasn't even a topic on the agenda about, you know, the concerns and the issues of people over here in North America. And I'll just speak for myself. I'm disappointed, given the fact that there was representation from the North American Fed, that those issues weren't raised.
Well, the question I had was, weren't these questions, didn't they have to be submitted in advance?
My understanding,
that's what it was.
My understanding is that it was a forum where, you know, these topics were going to be discussed. Now, you know, what sort of notice they would have beforehand, I don't know. But I
thought I read that on CQN. that these questions had to be. Listen, I'm telling you, I thought I read that.
The first step is admitting, Doc.
Boom!
What? You read it. Who doesn't? Come on, don't even joke. I know. Listen, it's out there. You read it. You read an article. You look at it. The one thing I can't stand about that entire thing is everyone, you know, clamoring to be on the podium or whatever bullshit about that stupid fucking blog. But I read it. I saw they were having a meeting. I read the stuff. I was like, okay, so submit a question. Okay, this should be interesting. And the impression that I got was, not only does the club think that or the PLC think I'm asleep at the wheel, they honestly think that I'm going to believe them as if, I'm 8 and my dad tells me that there is a Santa Claus. Are you out of your flipping mind? What they said in those answers? Are you kidding me? And then the sad part is the rest of it, there's no commentary. There's no, well, you gave 150 tickets. What about the other 7,000 fucking seats that are empty? What, you gave me $100 off? No, you didn't. You sold the inventory you had because you had too much inventory. Come on, I'm reading that and just fuming last night. The only thing that took my mind off of it was watching another 5.5 hours of House of Cards. But after that, that's it.
That's a great
Hey,
show.
Doc, I was thinking, it's Scotty. I was thinking about when you were talking about Celtic TV and everything.
Shapes to shoot.
Yeah, and here's what I'm thinking about, man. They're talking about creating their own personal little radio broadcast thing. How much of a fucking disaster is Celtic TV? And they refuse to address fixing that. They had 5,000 buffering issues this morning.
Mm-hmm.
But yet they can come up with, we're actively working on trying to create a broadcast to combat these other shows.
Whatever. They can't even figure out how to make an app that works with Android. Please. And then the sad part, and what kills me the most, is thank God they finally got Tom Boyd a new shirt. Tom Boyd, for the first 6 weeks he's on that show, wore the same fucking white shirt for 18 fucking shows.
I'm sure he washed it. All right.
It wasn't even ironed. They just hung it back up on a freaking hanger.
Dr. J, leave Tom Boyd alone. He's a good Tim.
No, I'm talking about Celtic TV. The poor guy, I'm sure, has his own, is given a wardrobe, but they can't at least take care of the wardrobe.
Oh, I doubt he's given a wardrobe.
I mean, his shirt. Listen, his shirt. They didn't make him buy a shirt from the. Well, maybe they did. Never mind.
Yeah, and Yampy, we're slowly opening his eyes. Listen, this is what you miss when all you read is CQN, Dr. J. CQN isn't going to tell you this.
Oh, nice.
We're getting we're getting some comments here, and Yampy, I'm sure you're going to love this. Getting some tweets coming in from a listener. Kind of hypocritical, Graham. Decry Forum signs the Green Brigade with a show where all agree on the same point. Where's the counterpoint? Well, it's from Charlie McGregor from up in Canada. Listen, Charlie, obviously everybody on the show agrees to a certain extent, I guess. All we're doing is giving our opinion, and I don't think that, we're being unfair in our concerns. I mean, this is an open forum as well, and if you'd like to provide a counterpoint, we're open to it. But it's not as if we're projecting one side of this. And the fact of the matter is, the Green Brigade weren't represented at all at this meeting. That's what we're calling out. This isn't like, we're not having a debate about the merits of the Green Brigade, good or bad. My issue is, why discuss the Green Brigade, when you haven't invited them to the meeting? That's my basic point. He goes on to say in another tweet, if as a group you harm my team, either change or stay away. Okay.
It's a wall of light.
I will agree to disagree. Good luck trying to get me to stay away.
Right.
Point of interest. Are you happy with anything, Capitals, coming out of Celtic Park? Don't assume you talk for Celtic fans. Charlie, listen, I never, ever assumed any of that I talk for all Celtic fans. Okay, so let me make that a point of contention. This is one show out of many podcasts. You have lots of options, and you can choose to listen to the podcast that best serves your interests. And if this podcast doesn't suit your interests, God bless you. You're free not to listen at any point. And you know what? I won't take it personally at all. I promise you. Everybody has a different opinion, and this is mine. And I, quite frankly, I'm a bit offended that it's either agree with your perspective or I can get out or stay away. I'm sorry, I don't line up with that.
Well, Graham, what opinion did you give? Your opinion. So I mean, the only comment about Green Brigade have been, you kicked people out of Fir Park for damaging seats. You blamed the Green Brigade, and none of them were arrested or blamed in the back end. And by the way, that wasn't front page news when you let them back in. Where's the opinion?
Well, I think that there may be, and I'm just going to sort of assume, and maybe if this is out of line, then I apologize. But I think that what Charlie is conveying here is that there wasn't a counterpoint to the anti-Green Brigade side, or the side that doesn't approve or agree with the Green Brigade. But that's again, exactly. That's not the conversation that we're having. My conversation is allaying the facts, which are the Green Brigade were not present in a meeting where one of the main points of contention was the Green Brigade.
Right, and not for nothing. Don't sit there and whine like a little bitch about, oh, if you don't like it, get the fuck out. You know, that's like a very kind of SNP, like love it or leave it, kind of our country, da-da-da-da-da mindset. Here's the real deal, dude. I'm sitting here talking about the club. They had a great win today, and we talked all about it and how great it was. But I'm not a fucking sheep, dude. I know what the PLC has been doing. It's been pretty shady lately. And I can sit there and separate what the team does on the pitch with what the PLC and Lowell are doing in the back fucking room. Okay? I don't have to sit there and be considered a bad Tim because I have fucking eyes and a brain. I can sit there and say that this guy's not doing things in the best interest of the supporters. It's very disingenuous what he's doing. Now, if that doesn't work for you, well, I don't know. You know, what big fucking deal. We have difference of opinion. But don't sit there and cry about, oh, you guys are so negative. Nah, they had a great win today. And we acknowledge that.
Exactly. We talked about that for the first hour of the show, but it seems as though some folks, if you disagree with them on a particular issue, then, it becomes, oh, do you approve of anything coming out of Celtic Park? Of course I do. You listen to the first hour of the show, we talked about how great the game was today. And then this idea that I assume that I speak for all Celtic fans. What are you, nuts? I never said that. I mean, I think certain people are giving me way too much power. Yeah, and like I said, it's an open forum, and if you feel as though you have a point vis-a-vis the Green Brigade being excluded from a meeting that a main point of contention was their very existence, then call in and tell me why it was right to exclude the Green Brigade, and then talk about them with other, fan forums or bloggers or whatever.
There's one of the guys in the Green Brigade that's always on the Homeboy show. I mean, call then. Yeah. Have it out with someone in the Green Brigade if you really have that much of an issue. I mean, to be honest with you, the four of us have been to Celtic Park, 6-8 times total between the four of us. None of us are in the Green Brigade. All we can do is give you our opinion of what we think is there or what we think should be done when dealing with them. We don't have an opinion on the Green Brigade because none of us are in the Green Brigade. So, I mean, to complain about us having an opinion on the Green Brigade or what they actually bring to the party, that's craziness.
Two things real quick, kind of jumping back a little bit. One, the Western civilization, our culture is kind of based, one of the most important things as far as law type stuff is habeas corpus. How can you have talk about someone or an organization and not have them present to, provide sort of defense or just to give their point of view on something?
Well, why not? Why not? You're punishing them for crimes they didn't commit.
Right. So that alone just blows that all out of the water. But I wanted to say, after you, I'm going to go and look this up myself and read the minutes for, in its entirety myself. But from what you've been describing and the questions and how they've been answered and not really followed up and not really been answered to their full potential like they should be, but it almost sounds like a Q&A during like a political debate. You get someone that asks a pretty straightforward question, and you just get just a total PR turned around, spun up response, and then no follow up to that. You just get the fluff, and that's what that sounds like to me. I don't know if you get the same impression, and that's why like those who were invited, going back to a political debate thing, the crowd that usually goes to those kind of things are the ones that, like the undecided voter, the people in the middle. So say, take us, for example, we've made up our mind already.
Yeah, I don't want to go to this meeting because I don't represent, these issues. And I don't think any blog should be, invited to this. It's nonsense. It should be open to anybody. Right.
And yeah, by having it like invite only like that, yeah, you you leave it to those who are kind of on the fence, and then when it gets when it becomes public, and people hear the sound bites from the questions, the answers, and so forth, then that part is to get the people that were undecided or on the fence or don't really have an opinion about this aspect of the team and how it's going. It's to pull them onto their side. And when you're talking about before, to combat these elements, or I know it was your word, but you said which part of the thing is evil. It's not a war. We're all really on the same side. Some people want a little more coming from the team, from those who have the power, and try to make it a little more friendly in the spirit of the club, how it used to be, and its ideals for upon which it was formed, and try to return to that, and not go along with this modern the modern football type model. And some people, if you just want to watch it you just want the sport, you want to watch the team, you want to watch them win trophies, that's great. I do too, but I want a little something extra, and I don't think that's too much to ask, to have either at least the representation to have your voice heard, and to hopefully try to bring about some of these changes.
Well, and listen, I mean, everybody has a different opinion. I mean, I think even amongst the four of us just now, we have a different opinion on certain things, but just because you might disagree with, an issue with me or an issue with the Rev or whatever, that doesn't mean that if you don't like it, you can just, stay away or whatever. I think that is far too quick of a response so many times, that if somehow somebody doesn't see it your way, then, then they should get the hell out. And, I'm some sort of arrogant mouthpiece that speaks for, I think I speak for everybody. I mean, we're all Celtic supporters at the end of the day. We all love the club, and we all perhaps have a different way of viewing, how things should go. But, the only way that this is going to be pragmatic or productive is to have all of these issues out there and to have some sort of accountability. And have these issues brought forth from a wide church. And we don't have a wide church through this medium, and we don't have any accountability. I mean, you can read the minutes from it. They released it themselves. And this just follows on from the sort of non-answered, non-committal responses that the club is so synonymous for. This is the Peter Lawwell line of thinking. You ask a direct question, and there's deflection. Is this an acknowledgement of a rift between the club and the fans? Oh, well, we don't see any problem with that. Are you kidding me? Right. Dr. J, did you see the game today? Let's get positive for all of the.
Let's get positive. There you go.
For the people who think I'm not happy with anything.
No, I saw the first half. I thought they played really well. I thought Hearts really focused a lot more this week on defense than they had the last time we played them. They probably did a little extra training this week. I thought with Griffiths up there, I think what's going to happen, and Scott, you said this earlier, that I think there's two issues as to why Commons hasn't been absolutely brilliant. Yes, I think that Griffiths is going to take a little bit of that spotlight from him because he is going to be playing a little bit further back in the hole, as you might say.
Definitely.
And also, listen, he's getting older. I mean, as a long season goes on, and they played a lot of games.
Yep.
With all the qualifiers beforehand. So, this is a matter of time, and I think they'll be fine. He'll be fine. I mean, I totally agree after watching today's game that Baton totally plays much better deeper in the midfield than on the wing. Oh my God. And Bruni on that right side tracking back is really good. And I think it's totally true. When Matthews comes back, it's going to be a dogfight for that right wing.
Yeah, and that's been a topic that's come up a couple times here, and I'm starting. Yeah. I'm beyond starting. I really think there's something to that. Putting Matthews on that right wing with Lustig just behind them, that's such a dynamic pairing. Up that right hand side. I mean, it's so dangerous. And it's exciting to look at. But in the meantime, I think Johansson is. I think we can conclude at this point that he is an exceptional signing. For whatever we paid for him, $2 million, or I'm sure it's quite a bit less than that. But he definitely has the looks of a player, and not just that, a player that can slot in a particular way and really make a significant contribution. So that's going to be exciting to watch him develop throughout the run into the rest of the season as we win the league and we extend this record of Fraser Forster's as long as possible. And speaking of which, we have a huge game coming up on Tuesday. Obviously, the context being, that the Scottish Cup performance. I hate to even think about it, but I think this game probably takes on renewed meaning and renewed significance. I don't think Neil Lennon's going to make the same mistake twice in terms of not being prepared for this Aberdeen team. And as Scotty has made this point, and reflecting back to that last Aberdeen game in the Cup, our midfield was completely overrun, and I don't think that's going to be the same mistake that's going to happen twice.
No, I think that the way they've played, they should. I mean, listen, the way they played the last probably 2.5 weeks. Is there a team in Scotland that should be able to hang with them? No. The only difference is how sky high a team wants to get. And there's a big difference between playing at Aberdeen than playing at Celtic. And the total difference is that you're going to get, playing at Celtic, someone's best shot every week, week in, week out. And to a certain extent, those teams can still bring it up or take it up a notch if they can, or if they really want to. And that's a big difference compared to Aberdeen. I mean, they're looking at, we could take this week off. We don't have to. Our fans aren't really expecting us to win every game, blah, blah, blah. And then next thing you know, there's a big difference between having to get up for every game versus, having to get up for 4 or 5 games a year. Aberdeen, really to what they have to get up for. What do they have to get up for? If they're going to finish in the top 2 or 3, get a cup final place, get a European spot, that's our season done. They know they're not going to win the big prize, but after that, the only thing they've got to do is just get up for one big cup game against Celtic. The big difference. There's a big difference in intent. So I see this is not going to be the same type of game. I think Celtic won't be overrun. I don't think Aberdeen's going to be all that excited to be there playing in a game midweek, and then a game that really doesn't mean anything because the game really doesn't mean anything.
Well,
so I think it's going to be a totally different game.
But I will say that Aberdeen, they are in a close battle, and they have firmly within their sights finishing second, which is significant. That they're going to have a lot to play for throughout the end of the season. I think that second place position is going to come down to the last game, so they're going to be scrapping and clawing for as many points as they possibly can. Does it have maybe the same sort of significance in the context that the Cup game did? Probably not. I think that, obviously, given the fact that our away support, and I just want to salute our away support today. It was just absolute bedlam from the start. The atmosphere was absolutely brilliant, and I would expect that same situation to take place at Pittodrie on Tuesday. There's going to be a stark difference in the atmosphere compared to that Cup game a couple of weeks ago at Celtic Park, where it was like a morgue, except for the Aberdeen supporters and the filth that they brought through. So I think that it is going to be a high intensity. I think there's going to be obviously additional storylines considering the last result. London's going to want some sort of vengeance for that, and I'm really looking forward to it. I'm anxiously looking forward to it. Obviously we want to extend this clean sheet record as long as we possibly can. But there's all sorts of storylines in terms of the players that are coming in and having an effect. Hopefully Johansson, the injury that he took isn't going to be too significant, because I'd like to see him play as much as possible. Rev, what are your thoughts for the game on Tuesday? In terms of planning for it. What do you expect? In terms of our lineup, who are we going to throw out there, and what are your expectations?
I would probably expect. I would expect pretty much the same lineup today. Just since it's only 3 days away or so.
Samra starting up top by himself.
Yeah, obviously for people's match fitness. I don't know what the turnaround time is for a lot of these guys, but maybe start pretty much what we started with today. Make some subs earlier. And hopefully, the younger guys that have been sitting. I don't know. I guess really the only question I might have is Matthews. Is he's probably won't be ready, so I don't. Or maybe we might see a little bit of him. I would pretty much expect the same thing today, and I expect them to be up for it. Especially given a couple weeks ago.
Yuppie, your thoughts?
Again, yeah, I'm pretty much in agreement with everybody else. God for fucking bid, huh? We can't have fucking uniformity, or else someone will fucking have a Moody. I'm expecting pretty much the same lineup. I'm not really. Why would you change? I mean, everything was pretty much clicking in it, especially in the second half today.
Maybe Balde. Griffiths took a knock. Not sure, what the extent of that's going to be. If he's not going to be ready, I
think if you're going to see any possible change, Johansson took a knock. I saw that.
Yeah.
Maybe
and that might free up Dr. J's. Well, God forbid. That might free up actually Dr. J's favorite player, Mulgrew, sliding over into the central midfield, and then maybe bringing Derek Fisher back because he, as he demonstrated last week, can slot in at the left back row and be quite effective. And then with Griffiths up top, if he's out, it basically comes down to Pookie and Balde, doesn't it?
Yeah, but I think Lenny doesn't want to really. Lenny's proven in the past that he'd rather defer to like guys with more experience, and I think with Fisher you still have a little bit of youth there. Far easier to bring a guy like Bo Richter in. At least he's been tested before. He might not give you much of fucking Jack Jangles, but they're paying a guy big money to do something, and this might be a chance for him to actually get into some kind of form, which he hasn't proved yet.
The only thing that makes me nervous about that is that, given the fact that we were so badly overrun in the last game, does Bo Richter give you enough steel in the middle of the park? Bo Richter's not going to track back, and if he does, he's not going to put in a tackle. He's not going to be effective in trying to slow somebody down, and that's what my hope is, that Lennon's going to be aware of that and guard against it. Bo Richter, late on, trying to kill off a game, no problem, but I just don't think he's strong enough to go up against some of these Scottish sides where we're going to need an extra layer of protection in the middle of the park.
Right, but again, at some point the manager has to find out what he has with this guy, and again, he really hasn't been able to give you 90 minutes consistently at any time. And
I think there's a very good reason for that.
Yeah, I think there's a great reason for that. But
yeah, she's hot. I'm sorry. Never mind.
But I think this would be a good opportunity for him. Like I said, Lenny always tends to defer, in favor of guys who are a little more experienced. Now, he could totally go against that and have no faith whatsoever in Bo Richter. I don't know. But my money's on possibly seeing Bo Richter in the starting 11 against Aberdeen.
Now, I'd hate to see that, Scotty. I really would, because I would assume that Bo Richter and Johansson are pretty similar left foot.
Yes.
You know what I mean? I would personally, I wish he was listening. I would love to see Darnell on that back right-hand side, and then have Matthews slide up the right, and then keep Bruni into the middle, and then go from there. That's a lot more defensively solid, and you're not going to get overrun.
Well, when we're talking about formations here, though, all of the suggestions that you're bringing up, there's definitely merit in it. But all of these adjustments are going to require a change in the formation. We can't play a diamond in the middle with Bo Richter in there, because Bo Richter is more of a wide type of player. He's more of a pure winger, and he's not going to track back. So, what you were saying about Bo Richter and Johansson being left-footed in a similarity, but Bo Richter doesn't have the work rate that Johansson does. He doesn't quite have the ability to read the game. I think that he gives a lot something much different to the side than Johansson does, where I think Mulgrew and Lennon's shown a propensity to play Mulgrew on that left side of the midfield, almost in a winger's spot, but not fulfilling that winger's role. Just on the left-hand side of central midfield, I think you can't take Baton out of that holding role just now. He's playing with a lot of confidence. He seems comfortable in that role, and especially the partnership with Van Dijk and Ambrose. So, if he's going to be sitting back there, and obviously with that being said, are you going to put Brown just next to him, and change the formation, like I said, and maybe go back to more of a 4-4-1-1 with Commons up top with, Stokes or whoever the remaining striker is? I think that's a big risk, in terms of coming up and trying to step up and match Aberdeen in a way that's going to sort of amplify our strengths. I think it's absolutely vital we continue on with this diamond formation that's been successful over the past couple weeks.
Speaking of which, has anyone heard from Forrest since he was grounded? I'm sure his mom took away his ability to go out at night. Has anyone heard from him?
him and Kyle are in like the witness protection program. And stuff.
I'm telling you.
I think we lost. I think we lost James Forrest at Chuck E. Cheese. He went in the balls, that ball pit, and I mean his neck isn't long enough to that's just wrong.
Him and Kyle are.
You realize we could that joke if we're at that meeting, Graham.
Really? Where's the ball pit for Wee Jamesy to jump into? Can I see that?
That's why he dies so much. He's used to tripping on the little plastic balls.
We didn't get our invitation because of our ball pit joke.
Some people have dick jokes. We have ball pit jokes.
We have ball pit jokes.
All right, listen. We're going to be...
Hey, listen, two more things, and then I've got to run. My boy just kicked off. First off, I'd like to get the two best tweets of the day out there. The first one was Griffiths in front of that chick. That picture. Oh, my God.
That's
Your arse is this wide. Oh, my God.
That's that's the wallpaper on my iPad now.
Oh, I need that. Yeah, I'm going to download that later. And the second one, that after looking at our team, the whole issue with this summer transfer season is really going to look like an M. Night Shyamalan movie. That was absolutely just brilliant. I'm afraid that that's probably going to be correct.
That was a tweet I sent out where I'm thinking about it. I'm like, this is going to be like, one of those M. Night Shyamalan movies, but I have no idea how it's going to end, so it's definitely not going to be The Sixth Sense.
Yes. It's going to be bad. You talk about witness protection program. We're just going to lose people. They were here one day, not the next. That's what happened. They got thrown in front of a train.
Oh, well, listen, I'm sure the club is coming up with, the PLC is coming up with some sort of robust weekly radio show that's going to combat the ball pit jokes. So we'll be out of our misery soon enough anyway.
I know.
Could you imagine? It would be like something on the whip. It'd be like, "Hi, I like to talk about the Phillies." No, click, and then it'd be gone to the next one. Let's talk about Mr. Lee as our pitcher. No, he's gone. Click. Yankee from South Jersey, you're on.
Yeah.
Houston, hello.
I guarantee you it won't get past the word Yampy, and it'll be cut right out.
Well,
go under like.
It's certainly not going to get past Myrtle Beach Ball Deep CSC.
No, that one's going to be right up there. But you know what's funny? They can't even give me after game interviews. They're going to give me a freaking podcast. Please.
Did you see the post game? Did you see the post game after the Aberdeen game? It was like a fucking someone was robbing the joint. They're like, all right, thanks, we're out of here. Bye.
It's crazy.
You get Kenny holding up a newspaper from the day, like a proof of life, and we got to go. Okay, bye.
That's crazy. I mean, I have to wait 2 days to get after match interviews with the player of the game, man of the match, and the manager. Why do I have to wait 2 days? Why can't you just stay on?
I hope they do a podcast.
You have your own damn film crew.
I hope they do a podcast. I'd like to have it. I'd like to have a podcast where Neil Lennon gets interviewed, or maybe the man of the match, or some new players get interviewed, or whatever.
They had to pull the chain on his Twitter account. They're going to let him do a podcast?
Well, I'd like to see it. I'd like it.
No, Neil. Step away from the keyboard, Neil. Step away from the keyboard.
I mean, they're not going to come on my show, so you might as well do your own show. That's the reason why we started this show. The club doesn't have anything. So if they're going to do it, then fine. That's great.
Beyond the heated driveways?
Dr. J, thank you so much for calling in, pal.
I got to roll. Hail, hail, boys. And by the way, 2-0. Happy. Way to go, Frazier. Lee, please stay away from the fatties tonight.
Good luck today, pal.
And somebody pull Wee Jamesy out of the ball pit.
Behave yourself.
Later,
have a good day. Good luck.
Bye.
He climbed into one of the claw games trying to get a teddy bear. He got stuck.
He's hanging upside down by the claw. Oh, we love a bit of Wee Jamesy. See, this is why we don't get the interviews of the players.
Being negative. Too much negativity.
Oh, we're so negative.
Guys, gotta blow a little more smoke up people's asses, guys.
Gray skies are going to clear up. Put on a happy face.
When did telling the truth or just as we say, keeping it real becomes such a fucking negative thing, man. Seriously? Like, you can't observe something that's not right and mention it. All of a sudden you have to get lost or something? What the fuck is that about?
I don't know. I think it gets back to what I was talking about, where people feel strongly about the club, and I understand that. I feel very strongly about the club as well. I'm very listen, hear me out. I'm very passionate, and I get that people take issue with the way that I communicate my views. I get it, but I'm never going to say to somebody that doesn't agree with my particular viewpoint to get lost, and that you're not a Celtic supporter, and you have no place supporting the club. And that goes to the Green Brigade. I think a lot of people, drink the Kool-Aid that's purveyed out there from the club, that the Green Brigade are some sort of evil entity, that are to be vilified, and they accuse them of things that have been proven they didn't participate in, but yet they continue to vilify them anyway, and they perceive that as hurting the club. And it's delusional. I mean, it's a deliberate ploy to deceive you. Now, if you want to have a debate about the merits of the Green Brigade and whether they're good or bad, that's fine. I'm happy to do that. But I'm never going to say that the Green Brigade aren't good supporters because Peter Lawwell said that they harmed our club, because that is a purely subjective measure. There are a lot of people who say that the Green Brigade do a lot to help our club. So, you can disagree with me, but I don't think that either one of us have the right or the authority to say that the Green Brigade, can get the hell out. That they're not welcomed, as Peter Lawwell terms it.
Right.
And that's the thing. Even if I disagree with the Green Brigade, at the end of the day, nobody has that authority to say who is and is not wanted or welcomed. That, for me, is just infuriating. The CEO of the club is going to pick and choose who is and is not wanted, and it comes down to control, as is evidenced by this Celtic supporters meeting.
That's
disaster.
the thing too, man. I think, like I said, it's important to be able to separate the two: the club, the team that's on the field, and the people that run the club. Now, I want to be positive about both, and I want to see positive in both. But we have an obligation to tell the truth about it. And it's like, if there's a guy running the show that's kind of creating like a civil war and the support creating a wedge, to sit there and act like it's no big deal would be just ignorant, man. You have to be able to sit there and say, look, man, this is what this guy's doing. You might not agree with me. You might think I'm full of shit or whatever, and that's fine. You have the right to voice that opinion. But at the end of the day, that doesn't make me a bad supporter because I said that.
Right.
And for someone to perceive that it does is kind of fucking dumb.
Well,
I just don't get people sometimes, man. I really don't.
And it's a complicated issue with a lot of emotion injected. And
but that's not the point, though. Emotion shouldn't preclude you from being able to use professionally. I mean, you should still be able, you can disagree with me, but this is fact, man. This guy has only invited certain people to hear his and the PLC's responses to things. That's fact. Right. I didn't make that shit up. This is the guy who runs the club. Right. He did that.
Right.
Don't get pissed at me. Get pissed at him.
Right.
And there's some people who are like, oh, well, what he says is gospel. Well, then I have the right to say that you need to be able to think for yourself a little more.
And listen, we're well within our rights to come on, this or whatever show that we have access to, and communicate not just our opinion, but to communicate our frustration on behalf of the Green Brigade, because they're not being represented with the club. The club are putting out a perception that doesn't include the input of the Green Brigade. So, am I somehow, being hypocritical if I provide the counterpoint to that? I don't think so.
I'm tethered to nobody, dude. I just call it like I see it. And if it looks like someone's getting screwed, I'm going to say it, I don't think that's a crime. And not for nothing, that Green Brigade looked like they really got royally jacked by this guy that's running the club.
Yep. Let's one more.
That's all I gotta say on that.
We got James was on the show last week. He reached out to us, and he sits in 111. We'll just say that. But I think he wanted to get on and sort of say his piece, and that's essentially what we're here for. So, James, if you're listening, give us a call so that we can get your thoughts. Obviously, that's what this is all about. Obviously, the Green Brigade are going to have a particular opinion. Let me see if I can catch him real quick. The Green Brigade are going to have a particular opinion on this, and I am sort of trying to speak on their behalf here, but it's good to get a sort of viewpoint from somebody that has a bit of a more direct experience there. James, are you there?
Is he in the John or something?
I don't know. He might be in a dishwasher.
I'm here.
James, how are you, pal?
I'm not bad. I was at the game today, so
I know.
the result.
I know. I heard you. It was fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. Especially the celebrations. I thought the Griffiths was comical.
He's doing a lot to endear himself, isn't he?
Oh, yes. I mean, at the end, he was getting us. He was turning around at free kicks and getting the fans to, his arms, getting the fans going, and at the end, he was over applauding. So, obviously, being a hippie, it was a big thing for him to come and, score.
Noise up the Jambos.
Yeah. Just going on to what you're talking about, with this Celtic supporters, so-called supporters thing. Now, I remember in the old days they were talking about with Stevie Kearney and that, they would bring one or two people in and, they'd get tickets and things if they voted their way. So Celtic will have a bigger meeting and it'll look okay. But when I read the first bit I read was about us, and it was absolutely bullshit. Everything, it was us to blame. We've got to work within the rules, and it was a bunch of nodding dogs. There. I didn't hear anybody yet anyway who stood up and says, "No, hold on a minute. What do you mean?" And I heard nothing of it. And I thought the way they spoke about Motherwell too was absolute bullshit. And I just never read the rest because it was all about catering rubbish and things like that. And I'm glad that the way Celtic spoke, it's proven that we're not wanted. I think we were right, definitely, if we seen it, to not renew for season tickets when we were disbanded from 111 and scattered. I think that proved it right away by Celtic's statement on this. Well, non-statement to me it was.
And what James, what about this comment from Celtic that they have been unable to get in touch with the Green Brigade per se?
Just my laugh just says it all.
And I know that in reading the minutes from the Celtic Trust meeting that there were members of the Green Brigade that were there that have documented proof, emails that they've printed out. I mean, that clearly show a repeated effort to reach out to the club and not having that responded to.
I mean, I can't get into it too much, but as you know, they hadn't been in contact with us, and obviously some of the members have proof who the ones, because they pulled the plug just before the so-called joint food bank we were doing with the Celtic Foundation, and pulled the plug, obviously because they booted us out, and there's been nothing. That's all I'm going to say just now, but I just think that what's been said has been right, that they picked only certain people. I'm not running down everybody was there because I know it can be hard going to these meetings and you're in the audience. To stand up and speak can be very intimidating, especially in front of Lawwell and some of the other ones there. And if you're not used to speaking in the public, let's just say like Jeanette or anybody else, it can be very, very intimidating. So I wouldn't run down everybody because it can be a hard thing. But the Celtic's answer is a complete joke. I think what Celtic are probably hoping is that we would be there all right through, because you think about it, there's season tickets to be sold, and a lot of people, not thousands, but there's a lot of people pissed off with what's happening with us. on what's happening with the supporters, not just us. And sorry, I've got a sore throat for the game today. What I'm trying to say is, and I think they're trying to smooth over it, let's just say, and they put the blame onto us. We've to bend the law and bend their rules. Well, see, at the end of the day, Celtic have never come out with rules. And the other thing is, rules to say this is what you can't do, what you can't do, you can do this. And the thing is, we've never shown any of our banners before we come in. So I don't know where this mistrust comes from. We've never shown it, and it's never been a bother. I'm not surprised by their statement. I think it was always coming. They were never going to admit that they were wrong for Motherwell, and they come up with some bullshit about people in different seats. Now, I was at the game today, and anybody who goes to away games will tell you that the away support is a different support. A lot of them are drunk, everybody stands up, and I was allowing people into my row today, to stand with their friends. It'll be the same on Tuesday when I go to Aberdeen. It's always been the same at away games. People go to different seats. That's just what happens. It's always happened with Celtic fans, probably other teams too. But obviously we've got a large away support. So again, Celtic's statement about Motherwell is laughable.
Well, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever, because the crux of the matter is they responded in a way that vilified and blamed the Green Brigade for the breaking of the seats. So then they say that a large section of supporters that typically sit in a particular section of the lower tier were not in the seats that they, should have been. There was but the crux of the matter was, can you prove that any of those people were indeed the ones that had broke any of the seats? And they admit that they cannot prove it, and yet they don't go back on, they say that they, removed the suspensions, but they haven't put these supporters back in their seats as if things were, the way they were before the game. So essentially, by relocating them, you're holding them to account for something that they didn't do. It's bullshit.
See, Graham, what they could have did was not mention anything to newspapers and just says, look, the only thing we're going to suspend these people just temporary to check. Instead of going to the papers and running with stories like they did the massive riot in Dundee, where they came out right away, and that was us that was getting the blame again. Right, where nothing happened. So again, what they've did is here is they've ran to the papers instead of saying, look, we've suspended some people's tickets just now, just to investigate. Being open instead of running to the newspapers who had a field day that people were going to die and not, absolute over the top nonsense. But what they've done is they've been very clever. They've got a lot of Celtic fans that come out with a lot of, which is not very good stuff against us, getting people to turn against us, then invite them in and say this is how great it is, then come out with these bullshit, knowing that probably a lot of them will not challenge it. And that's what's, so far what I've seen. I've not seen any extra minutes where people have said anything from the floor to counter it. And I don't know if there is any out there, because it was crap after that about, as I said, the catering and Kerrydale. I mean, who cares? Let's get to the crux of the matter about the beasting of our fans, all our fans, by the police and the stewards, some stewards and the police force, especially at away games and some of the home games, since we've not been there. This should have been the crux of the matter. Never mind catering and things like that. This is the main one, why we've got a lot of supporters going down for certain reasons. A lot of people, after when we didn't renew and didn't go back, they turned on other supporters who were getting thrown out. This should have been the main thing. But as I said before, I wouldn't blame everybody who was there, because it's very, very hard at times to speak up, especially you're same as your club, and you're the people look at them being the people who are running the club. It can be very intimidating for some people, and also some people it's not. But it should have been challenged, and it was absolute bullshit. And if people can't see that, then what can I say?
Well, listen, let's be fair. I mean, I take your point on the fact that it can be a lot to take in. You go to this forum and you're speaking in front of Lawwell, and people to have differing levels of comfort with that. Personally, I don't really give a shit. In my opinion, Peter Lawwell works for me. He works for everybody else that's a Celtic supporter, not the other way around. I basically stalked him when they were over in Philadelphia to play the friendly against Real Madrid. I didn't stalk him, but I noticed him in the lobby, and I said, he works for me. I'm going to talk to him and tell him what I think. And the bottom line is, the people who were invited to this event, they represent a larger constituency, with the affiliation with the Celtic Supporters Association, with the North American Fed, and then these bloggers. Why the hell they were invited, specifically, I'll never know. Just finding out now that Matt McGlone wasn't invited. We spoke about Matt McGlone just a short time ago, and the fact that he talked about once you are sort of inside the tent, it becomes harder and harder to have an objective view. So that's another sort of element to this, another question that would come out of this. Well, why wasn't Matt McGlone invited? Why wasn't the alternative view invited, to this event? But not the View was, and Celtic Underground was, and CQN was. What are the criteria that were involved for these attendees? It's curious. I'm not going to allude to anything, but it makes you wonder. I'll just leave it at that. And the bottom line is, those people don't speak for the common fan. Celtic pointed out the fact that they wanted to reach out to supporters and address these issues that are out there. That's not how you do it. You make it a forum that's open to the common punter, the man on the street. Hear what their issues are, and they won't do it. They invite all these people in to talk about the Green Brigade behind their back, and they don't invite the Green Brigade in to do it. How that conveys any sort of transparency, I'll never know.
It's disappointing, but I think it's just reinforced our decision not to go back after we were disbanded from 111 and they tried to spread us about. I think it's contempt, and they're still never apologised to the Celtic fans, not only for Motherwell, but for going over the top, but they've never ever apologised for the Dundee rubbish. They've just never apologised. And same again, we're to blame, and we have to come grovelling to them. Nah, I'm afraid no.
Yeah.
The grovelling, obviously people will go grovelling to them and that's what they want. Whether we speak to them or no, I don't know. Obviously, if we're wanting back in or we're asked in, you've got to speak to them. Whenever if that happens, fair enough. But you've got to in the first place speak to them, because it's same at own the club or run the club. Whatever way you want to look at it. But it's a hard one. As I said, I'm not disappointed with the statement in the sense that I knew it was coming. You knew it was going to happen. And what they were going to say, they weren't going to say, look, we made a mess out of Motherwell, we accused fans, blah, 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 for this and that. We apologised to them. Of course I'm not going to do it. Which would have been the right thing to do in anybody's book, but not them. These right-wing Tories, they're not going to do it.
Yeah, and essentially it's the mentality. And, the issue of the Dundee, inverted commas, riots continually happens, and not to be glossed over, because there is a precedent for this. And it's the mentality that's broken. It's not, having a select few in for, a cup of tea and to, take on these questions and then sort of deflect and provide non-answers. That's not going to fix this issue. The whole thing strikes me as not being very well thought out, on the front end. And it's concerning. And hopefully, there are concerns as a result of this meeting that are conveyed, and hopefully they do adjust. They do take this on board, and they do, make this open to more people, and not just, people who perhaps could project a favorable view on their blogs or podcasts or whatever. This is not productive. I think you were modest in saying that, there's might not be thousands who, wish that the Green Brigade would come back. I think there's quite a sizable amount of supporters, that turn up to the games each week that want to see the Green Brigade back. And the evidence of that was shown when the Green Brigade was back last week, albeit in a different section. The response from the rest of the crowd to seeing that banner come up and to say that, and for the club to turn around and say that the majority of the support are with them on this issue is just, it's delusional.
Yeah, as I said, it can be at times, frustrating. That we would rather be at the game than not at the game. But as people know, been pointed out, after the treatment we've had and the lies, whether people think we should leave our politics at the door, which I've been hearing, which is quite funny. Being the right wing Tories who allowed to pop in the strip, and then John Reid, and they've got Lords on their board, and they do political stuff themselves. It's laughable, but I don't know. It's a hard one. As I said, I wasn't surprised with what Celtic said was, and it just, to me, reinforced that we did the right thing.
James, thanks for calling in, pal. And
No problem, mate.
we appreciate your perspective, and keep us updated. In terms of what the latest is with the Green Brigade. We certainly hope that the Green Brigade will be coming back soon. That's James from 111. Specifically, want to point that out. But he does have a unique perspective in terms of the treatment there. He was himself relocated, and it's hard to. It's not hard, actually. It's very easy to empathize with his frustration. By being held to account for something that he wasn't even there to be guilty of. So. All right, boys, I think we'll wrap it up here. Before we wrap it up, let's get predictions. Yampy, Tuesday night, what are you thinking?
I think we get a little revenge on Aberdeen. 3-2, I'm calling it. But I would take that with a grain of salt, bro, because right now I couldn't pick my nose if I tried the way I've been calling stuff. Between the Super Bowl and every other game in between that I've predicted, it's just going south on me. It was like mush. Put me in the bathroom.
Coffee Cake, get in the bathroom. I don't want him looking at that kid while he throws my dice. You're a bookie's dream, and so am I. I've only maybe gotten one or two right this entire season, but I think the clean sheet streak continues. I think it's going to be 2-0.
That's what I'm going with, 2-0.
2-0? Yeah, I think that, a lot of it's going to hinge on, Griffiths and, his fitness. Obviously, he's a key component to making this particular formation work, and work it has over the past couple of weeks. So I'd like to see us continue with this, generally the same mold. If Griffith isn't fit to play, I think that Neil Lennon is probably going to err on the side of putting Pookie in there, especially on the heels of him scoring the goal that Mito Balde basically gifted to him. But nonetheless, 2-0.
See, the way I saw Griffiths hopping around after the game, he was all excited, going to the crowd and everything. He seemed like he was all right, man.
Yeah.
That's not as big of my concern as Johansson is. I think that's a bigger concern.
I would agree with that, and I think that's much more of a doubt, Johansson being available, but we'll have to see. All right, boys, good stuff. 3 hours.
Excellent, my friend.
Not a bad effort. All right.
Anything to take us out with, Graham?
Taking us out, as always, is Shane McGowan and the Pogues. Say goodbye, Rev.
Take care.
And that's take care from me. I'm Graham Wilson, and I don't speak for all Celtic supporters. Hail, hail, and keep the faith.
The island, it is silent now, but the ghosts still haunt the waves. And a torch lights up a famished man who fortune could not save. Did you work upon the railroads? Did you ride the streets of crime? Were your dollars from the White House? Were they from the 5 and dime? Did the old songs start to cheer you? And did they still make you cry? Did you count the months and years? Or did your teardrops quickly dry? I know that it was not to be on a coffin ship. I came here and I never even got so far that they could change my name. Thousands are sailing across the western ocean to a land of opportunity that some of them will never see. Fortune prevailing across the western ocean, their bellies full, their spirits free. They'll break the chains of poverty and they'll dance. In Manhattan's desert twilight, in the dead of afternoon, we stepped hand in hand on Broadway, like the first men on the moon. And a blackbird broke the silence as you whistled, it's so sweet. And in Brendan Behan's footsteps, I danced up and down the street. And we said goodnight to Broadway, giving it our best regards. Took our hats to Mr. Cohen, dear old Times Square's place.